Good evening and welcome to the Town of Dudley Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, January 26, 2002. Present this evening, we have the full board. Mr. Richard Clark, Vice Chairman, Steve Watrova, Clerk of the Board, Thomas Chinaki, Member, Daniel Edmiston, Member, and myself, Guy Horn. And we also have our Town Planner, William Scanlon. First item on our agenda for this evening, approval of minutes from December 8th and January 12th. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and would somebody like to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept the meeting minutes for December 8th of 2021 as presented.
I can second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor for December 8th?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we would be looking at January 12th, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept the minutes for January 12th, 2022 as presented.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Steve, you ready?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Two abstaining?
Two abstaining. Yeah, they weren't here at the meeting. That's okay. All right, takes care of the minutes. Can we get some copies circulated so we can sign it? Okay. One of them's
I
here.
got said.
12th is here, okay.
I didn't forget it this
Oh.
time.
Okay, there you go.
This for December?
December.
Like you said.
Okay, this is one set.
Okay, here's one for the 8th. Another one for the 8th. This is the 12th.
I think I got it.
Tom, I think you signed on the 12th and you're abstaining.
Yeah, another clean copy on that, or close it out?
Yeah.
Proceed.
Oh, if you didn't sign the other one, you had to switch signature sheets to write that.
Yeah, this is the 12th at 7 pages too. This is the 8th. No, I'm sorry, the 8th had 7 pages and the 12th had 5 pages. Okay, this is okay. Okay, while those are circulating, let's take our second item on the agenda, A&R plans. Dennis Parda, Windmere Road, West Main Street.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dennis's father. Dennis is in Indiana,
Okay,
so Mr. Parker is representing his son tonight.
sure. So can you explain briefly, Bill, what's happening here with the 3 lots?
Yes. There's an existing lot, which create 2 additional lots. So lot 1, which has frontage on Whittier Road, would contain an existing house and variant frontage and all the other setback requirements. 2 new lots are lots 2 and 3, which have frontage on West Main Street. Lot 2 is divided by a zoning boundary. It's business 15 on, I guess that would be the northern side, or the eastern, I guess it's the eastern side, and it's zoned light industrial on the western side. Lot 3 is entirely zoned industrial.
Mhm.
So he could build, or if a buyer could potentially build a house on lot 2
Yep.
by putting it in the business 15 district, or it could be used for business purposes, or industrial purposes on the western side of the lot.
Yep.
And lot 3 is all industrial, so it can only be used for industrial purposes on that lot. So the two new lots conform to zoning for area and frontage. West Main Street, as you know, so the courthouse is just off this plan to the, actually, you can see it listed on the map, County of Worcester. And the road sort of begins to pick up speed as you travel to the west, and it goes downhill a little bit. So there need to be care given to access driveway permits for these lots because of the speed of traffic. But I think those are issues that the highway superintendent would be able to work out. There's no physical access problems with like slopes or wetlands or anything like that. So so it appears to me that it's approvable, or has an approval not required plan.
Mr. Chairman, just as a note, at the last selectmen's meeting, the police chief noted that area was one of concern, given weather conditions that we typically experience in the wintertime. And I think that was echoed by the highway department as well.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, you said it all.
So, I just looked at the acceptance, the submission sheet, and there's no waivers requested, but I'm not seeing a lot of, I'm not seeing the contours on the map, or the, what you just mentioned. Actually, I'm not seeing the topography on the map, and I'm not seeing what you just mentioned about like the driveway access or anything that. So
They don't need to show the driveway access, I don't think, do they?
that's usually on the A&R plans, and that's under number, that's under 6J, a profile of existing grades of the proposed access to the lot.
Okay. Right, so that isn't on the plan.
Right.
I don't know if they've gotten far enough along to know where they would provide access, but
Okay. Well, that's, I mean, what we don't wanna have happen is the same thing that happened on, was it Progress, or? Yeah, I mean, if we can avoid it.
Mhm.
If we approve the plan and there's no shown access, then if they come back and they have a 20% slope,
Mhm.
we'll be in the same situation.
Mhm. That is quite a slope there, too.
Right.
So is it just the intent to set this in motion with the thought that someone will buy the property, or do you have plans in terms of building on it?
I have no idea. It just gives him more options probably to sell it, or maybe he has some plans to, like you mentioned, he's in Indiana, gonna retire another year and coming back here. I have no idea what his plans are. Just gives him more options to do something than, one big lot. But
So-
right now, there's no plans to do anything or build anything on it.
So would you like to send this back for addition of topography?
Yeah,
I mean,
the driveway access.
But, Mr. Chairman, if I may, on lot 2, as you pointed out, Bill, you can either do something industrial on one side or a house on the other side. So how can you show access if you don't know if it's gonna be a house or another use?
Mhm.
That would be almost impossible at this point.
they
And
could-
as far as lot 3 is concerned, whenever there is a plan to build something and the lot, it starts to get in front of a building permit, don't they need to talk about that at that point in time as well?
He would need a driveway permit in order to get a building permit.
And that would be under the highway department have a chance to review that at that
They-
time, right?
Yes, they would have to apply, for the driveway permit.
Right.
Okay, so if it's, I mean, it's up to the board's pleasure, but I mean, if you're willing to waive the topography and the profile of existing grades, then I think, I don't see anything. Is there anything on here as far as wetlands?
No, there's nothing in there.
So I was just wondering, Mr. Chairman, I know there's a stream, you know, when you come down Tufts Hill here, and you look to the left and you look at this property, there's almost like a gorge that there's always water running through it right there. So I don't know what that's classified, if that's classified as a perennial stream or what, but I was wondering where that was in reference to these lot lines that we're looking at here.
The town does own a large parcel further down the
Now,
road.
this is just as you're starting to come down from the courthouse direction.
okay, I see.
Up when you're looking this way. I mean, I don't know how much of this courthouse property is wooded over here.
So maybe if he's willing to take it back without prejudice and give this copy of this A&R acceptance plan, the list, the checklist to the engineer, maybe he could go through it and put on the stuff that's missing,
Sure.
or just request a waiver. But I mean, right now, we don't have any waivers requested, and there's quite a bit of stuff missing. So, sir, what we could do is, this form somebody filled out, I don't know if it was you or your engineer, but somebody filled out this form, this checklist. There's 6 items on here, plus under 6, it goes from A to M. The engineer could go through this list and check off, because right now there's some things we're seeing that are missing on the plan, like topography, wetland delineations, and profile of existing grades. Now, if you want to ask for a waiver for that, you're in your right to do that, but right now you're not requesting any of the waivers, and there's none of that information is on the plan. So if you could give this checklist to the engineer, he could review it and then see if he can put some of these on the plan. That would be great. If he puts them all on the plan, then you don't have to ask for any waivers, and we just approve it as is. But if there's something on here that he doesn't want to put on, or it's going to be too expensive to put on the plan, then you can ask for a waiver and we can consider it. It's just that right now there's things missing on this plan that are not.
So what do you want me to do now?
I would take this plan back to the engineer. It says George Smith
Yeah.
signed off on it.
Right.
Yeah, so I would go back to Mr. George Smith, the engineer, with this checklist and ask him if he can
Check off that.
make sure that all the things on this checklist are included on your plan,
All right, I can do that.
okay? That would be the easiest way. I mean, if there's some things you can't put on and you wanna ask for a waiver, that's okay. I mean, it's not common that everybody comes in all the time with every single thing filled out, but right now, we don't have anything checked off on the checklist.
All right, I can do that. Not a problem. Do I need that first?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay,
Bill, is this his copy too?
yep,
Yes.
Here's your other copy.
Oh, you want this one as well?
yeah, maybe we give them back to him.
Here.
Yep, so we don't have another copy anymore.
All right.
Okay. Item 3 on our agenda for this evening, 7:15, continuation of public hearing on the redevelopment of Stevens Mill. And, okay, we're about a minute away, but you guys could get set up, that would be great.
This set of plans was in our package, was it?
Some of it was.
Are we ready?
I think we're all set.
Great, good evening. We're here as a continuation from our last meeting. We've accomplished a few things. One is to show the entrance onto Mill Street, and we've had some participation from you folks to come up with the design. We've been through that with the Tri-Valley folks, and they're happy with the design. It accomplishes keeping their parking separate from our project and providing some overflow parking, which we would share. So we're happy with that. They've been great to work with, and we're just pleased to be able to improve their parking as well as ours. Secondly, we've expanded the design on the river park, if you will. And so we've got that to show you. Additionally, you had mentioned wanting to have the easements in place for both those items. We've gotten, I'll let Stephen Manaus talk about the easements, but we've drafted them. I think we've done the public park. We've delivered that to the town. So we're waiting for comments back on that. We've delivered the easement to Tri-Valley, or the owner of the lot. We're waiting for them to give us feedback. I would think in the next 2 weeks or so, we should be able to have those in an acceptable form. What we're hoping for tonight is to get your concurrence on our parking, and with that, we'll complete the engineering drawings for that. Then we go through, that'll lead to the stormwater calcs, which will take through a peer review while we finish the traffic peer review. At that point, we feel like we'll be where we need to be. We're not asking for parking variances anymore. We've come up with enough shared parking to where we can handle our own needs. In fact, we're a little over that. So, you know, I'm the guy that kind of summarizes what all these guys have done. And so I've done my summary. They can ask, you know, they can answer any detailed questions you've got. But I really do think we've come quite a ways. And if you remember, when we started this process, we did not have an entrance onto Mill Street, and that was everyone saying, you gotta have that. That would make a big difference. So the result of this whole process is we now have an entrance onto Mill Street that both property owners are happy with. So we're real pleased with that.
Okay.
Turn it over to you to show what
Perfect,
you've done.
John. Thank you. My name's Matt Merva from Bowler Engineering. I'm a principal there, land planner, and landscape architect. Brandon Barry, who's been working closely with me on these plans, isn't here tonight, but I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have as we proceed here. But I believe everyone's seen the updated plan. I'll just walk through it. It really involves, as John mentioned, the reconfiguration of access onto Mill Street and providing access onto Mill Street, which it didn't before. Formerly, you would have to come into the parking area, loop back around, and come back out to Ardlock Place. Now there's actually egress out through the site adjacent to us, out to Mill Street, which will be a shared entrance between us and the Tri-Valley site. So John and Steve have been working hard with Tri-Valley on the agreements there. Steve Madaus can get into more detail on how all of that works. But this area here is further elaborated in this little inset in the plan right here. And the camera person's doing a great job of keeping up with where I'm pointing here. Thanks very much. So this shows, again, that egress out onto Mill here. This was discussed at length with members of your technical staff and the peer reviewer, Mr. Dirk. And this was the solution thought to be the best way to provide this shared access. So someone entering from Mill Street here could either make a right to come into Tri-Valley's parking lot or continue on to come into the new residential lot here. And people exiting the site can come out here and make either a right or a left. But again, if you'll recall from the discussions with the traffic peer reviewer, the reason for providing this was really to provide more direct access to northbound traffic, not forcing them down to the intersection at Main Street and allowing them to get up and out through Mill Street. Any questions on that right now? Are you able to see that? I'm glad to bring the plan closer to you.
So the question I have is as far as the easement goes, are you granting an easement to Tri-Valley to be able to use your driveway to come into their parking lot? Is that what?
I'm going to let Mr. Madaus speak more to that point, if you don't mind, Stephen. You're welcome
Good evening, members of the planning board. Stephen Madaus with Myrick O'Connell. Let me just orientate myself. Okay, so this parcel is owned by Dudley Mill Realty LLC. That is commonly referred to as the Tri-Valley property. And what was interesting, they had acquired, this was conveyed from the prior owner to Dudley Mill Realty LLC. And then a few years later, they acquired a lot here and raised a single-family home that was there. But that gave us the opportunity to explore addressing what the board requested, which was driveway access to Mill Street for the mill redevelopment. But Tri-Valley, as was relayed to this board at a prior meeting, was very concerned that their parking remained segregated from the activity of access for the mill parking. So that's why this configuration perhaps is a little bit difficult to digest initially, but it addresses Tri-Valley's concern and accommodates the concern of the planning board to provide alternative access to Mill Street rather than Ardlock for all the parking. So this parcel is owned by this property owner. So they are conveying, the proposal is, and the easement agreement has been delivered to council for Tri-Valley. They're meeting this week to respond back. But they would convey to Stevens Mill owner easements for access, non-exclusive, so it would be shared. And non-exclusive easements, perpetual easements, meaning permanent, for parking and for the installation of utilities should we ever need it. Now, I tell you, that's the scope of the easement, but with that caveat that Tri-Valley is reviewing it this week. So we haven't heard back from them yet, but Mr. Gumpitt's been in negotiations, discussions with them we believe this will be the deal. And they were pleased with the accommodation of not disturbing their segregated parking. The easement agreement requires Stevens Mill owner, the mill developer, to make all the improvements and also to maintain, so we would do the snow removal repairs of that shared access way, but not their parking lot. There were, as you would imagine, other rights between the parties from the prior conveyance. I forget what year that was, but the easement agreement will kind of clean that up. This parcel has rights for drainage over our parcels. That will be preserved, and but tied to the new improved stormwater management that will be implemented with our development. So that's where we are on the easement for access to Mill Street with the driveway. The other easement we prepared was to convey to the town of Dudley easement for pedestrian access on the what's sometimes referred to as the Riverwalk, the walkway that would be along the river as improved. Now, we don't have yet a survey plan or an engineered plan to identify that layout specifically. We have the general location of it, but the easement deed I sent to the town planner and I sent to town council for review. So we're waiting back for comments on that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we have a comment from the highway superintendent, and if I may, just one of his concern was that, and I'm just going to quote him here, comes to mind is some type of deed restriction / agreement that survives the change of use or ownership of either of the properties. Is that part of what is being negotiated with the Tri-Valley folks?
Yeah, the easement agreement would be perpetual, permanent conveyance to benefit this property, to subject that property to the access and shared parking. So it's not tied to any particular use. It was fortunate that they had acquired that other parcel to give us more room to preserve their existing parking lot.
That access that they're showing on Mill Street was something that was recommended by Jeffrey Dirk, the board's peer review consultant, to provide some separation between Flaxfield Road and that access, so there's not conflicting turning movements of cars coming out of Flaxfield with the mill traffic.
Not a four-way
So,
intersection.
and Mr. Dirk felt that that was sufficient separation, provide good sight stopping distance for traffic on Mill Street, so it seemed to make the most sense from our point of view.
Any other questions on the plan right now, or I can move into the Riverwalk exhibit?
If I may?
Could you go over the parking situation again? Mr.
Sure
Chairman
thing.
mentioned.
Yep. So,
What's the required number of spaces, and how many are you providing?
Bill, excuse me, we don't have the use of this screen?
I could set it up if you like.
Oh, okay, because
Let me just tell them
some
the
distance
unit
away,
count.
that
Yeah.
seems to be a lot larger. If that's at all possible, thank you.
Just give me a minute to.
Yeah, while you do that, can I just inform the planning board that, the unit count had been in flux with an old mill building as the architect worked through. We have a updated number of 159 units. I think on the application I had 156, so that's an addition of 3. And as the planner pointed out, we do have in excess of parking for that number of units. The split, I know the planning board was interested in what size each of these residential units would be. The number of studio units went up from 29 to 34. So 34 studios, that's plus 5 from the original. 1 bedrooms went down from 74 to 72. And then 2 bedrooms stayed the same as the original representation at 45. And the number of townhouses stayed the same at 8, for a total of 159. And from that, we can.
Figured out what to do with the towers yet? You're still working on that?
We really don't know. We're still working on it, but we don't know.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we're here to basically give concurrence to the parking. So we know how many units there are, how many parking spaces are there, how many parking spaces are required, how many are handicapped, how many are for the mixed use?
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested in right now.
sure thing. So we, based on the plan that you see before you, we have 276 parking spaces shown right now. Based on the requirements, 159 units at 1.5 spaces per unit would be 239 required. And then the amenity space of 5,637 square feet times 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet is another 23 spaces required. So that brings the total required to 262. We've got 276.
What are the sizes of the parking stalls?
The sizes of the parking stalls are 9 by 18.
How many handicap?
The accessible spaces are showing, grab that number. I think it's 9, actually. 9 total. Sorry, 7 total. Thank you, Steve.
That brings you to 269. How many do you have
The,
total?
the number I gave you before included the accessible spaces.
Oh,
276, okay.
Yeah, the 276 includes 7 accessible parking spaces.
okay. So you have anything designated for visitor parking or delivery or anything like that?
So we've got those 7 additional spaces beyond the required amount. Those could certainly be dedicated to visitors. And then deliveries, there are areas on the plan for loading and drop-off that are shown. Thanks. Right here, we have a proposed loading area in this cross-hatched section here. And then we've got, drop-off at the main entrance there. So we are providing for a trash enclosure here, so there's access to that trash enclosure for trucks as well.
I did have one other thought on the parking and the egress over there on Mill Street.
Mhm.
Are you gonna have some sort of signage so that when people come in to that entrance there, they're gonna know not to go into Tri-Valley? Because when you look to the
Yeah.
right, it might be natural to just assume that first parking lot.
Absolutely, that'll be there'll be signage, directional signage as you come in here, indicating that straight ahead is for the Stevens Mill redevelopment residential, and to the right is for Tri-Valley.
Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Tri-Valley hasn't given you acceptance yet, what'd you say, 14 days?
That's just on the easement.
For the
On the
easement.
plan itself, they're happy with it.
Yeah, I think we sent that to them Monday, to their attorney.
So, two quick questions. General layout of parking, of light fixtures?
Yes, there was a lighting plan included with the original application. We haven't made many modifications to that plan yet. As we're kind of finalizing this, we'll be revisiting the lighting plan and updating all of that, but we'd essentially provided for pole-mounted lighting throughout the property, and we'll make sure that the proper foot candles of coverage are provided on those surface areas.
And Bill, as far as I know, our parking requirements, and for Dudley, we don't have anything that would require more islands or trees among the parking spaces, correct? There's a lot of parking, but there's that many trees or many islands in there, so we don't have anything in our regulations that I recall that would call for something like that.
I'm not sure, I don't recall any.
Yeah.
I'd have to check.
And again, we'll update the landscape plan to coincide with this version. What you've got before you already didn't include this area, so we'll need to adjust the landscape plan to accommodate those new paved areas. But we're providing a combination of street trees and foundation planting and lawns and grasses throughout the site.
Yeah, trees are a mixed blessing in parking. You
Yeah.
get a little shade, but at the same time, sometimes you get sap or other nasty things.
Yeah, we try to specify, species that are gonna be easy to maintain and, good standard street trees that most people use in parking areas.
I'm good.
Okay. All right, so if you wanted to move on to the Riverwalk section?
Sure thing. So we've provided here an exhibit that just kind of enlarges the area along the riverfront here and shows how pedestrian access will work and what some of the various uses are along that Riverwalk. So you see Main Street at the bottom of the sheet here, and that extends, the property continues up a little bit, and then we're off our property essentially at this line here. But the idea would be to create accessible pedestrian access from the mill redevelopment property down to, there's a lot of grade change between this parking area and the riverfront. So this is a 5% accessible walk that gets you down to a landing area here. If you look at it in cross-section, you can see the slope coming down from the parking area. We've got a seat wall down at the bottom here at this landing area, and an overlook deck that gets you kind of out over the riverfront. Really, we want to make this a little more open and inviting. If you see some of the existing conditions photos here, heavily overgrown, there's a lot of invasive plant material in there. We'll work closely with the Conservation Commission to come up with a plan for removing some of those invasive species and really opening up some of the views to and from the river. But providing an opportunity for seating and gathering down along that river with this overlook deck that you see in cross-section here is really going to make that riverfront an amenity that can connect up to future Riverwalk development to the north. And then we also see the ability to provide a bridge crossing. There's a little inlet from the French River here that comes up, that came up right to the building. It actually does connect under the parking lot and essentially touches the building there. We'd have a pedestrian bridge crossing here, and eventually, ultimately, snake our way up to the bridge at Main Street. This is the site of that plaza that's been redeveloped recently that has some of the stones from the old mill and some signage there. That's right about where we would come up and propose to cut through that wall so that pedestrians could come to and from the Riverwalk at that site just after the bridge there. So that's shown at this connection here. So this would be a walkway that does need to make up considerable grade as well. The elevation at the bridge is obviously much higher than when you're down at the land side of the river there. But we'll provide detailed drawings ultimately that show the accessible connection there. So that's our section of the Riverwalk. We're proposing to, create several little spaces. There's another pull-off here, proposed seating area for people to stop along the way down that path. But we see this as a real opportunity to connect this proposed redevelopment down to the river and then make that broader connection throughout town by connecting it at either end of our site.
Matt, is there any, on the northern end of the site, is there any informal connection that exists to that adjacent property?
So right now, there's a power line easement that runs along here. So that's right about where this attaches, and through agreements with National Grid moving forward, there might be a way to create future connection through there as well.
How would we do that?
We'll have to work with you on that process and figure out the best way forward, and working with the landowners in this direction, and making sure that there are agreements on easements for pedestrians, just like we're creating here. But we're certainly allowing for that to happen by connecting up in that direction, and those are projects that'll have to, help help make that further connection throughout town. Any questions on the Riverwalk?
Question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is there any cleanup of the river, at least at that portion of the river, that would be required? I mean, is there an accumulation of shopping carts in there, for example, that kind of thing?
We'll work with the Concom to see what we can do getting in there. If it's just removing debris, that's certainly one thing, but if it's clearing up log jams and things that have kind of accumulated over time, sometimes that requires some special permitting that we need to understand better what that would entail. But certainly cleaning up trash along that riverfront would be something that would be in the project's best interest for sure, to make that attractive.
Thank you.
Have you considered, sorry.
Sorry, go for it.
Have you considered the possibility of somehow tying in the existing sidewalk with the proposed driveway coming in from Mill Street? Having that sidewalk come down the new, your north side there,
Oh, I'm sorry.
up there,
Here.
right along there and coming down to the Riverwalk. So that any pedestrian traffic coming down Mill Street could literally go down by the river and follow the river trail and back out to Main Street, as opposed to having to go through Ardlock Place and that whole congested area there.
I think there could be a less formalized access to it. The problem is grade change between here and here, and providing an accessible
Where does
route.
that on the map you showed us, the 5%,
This one.
yeah, where does that end up coming up to the building on that,
Oh, okay,
on that
great
plan?
question. So that 5% walk is right here, and then there's a walkway that edges the parking area here, and then there's a crosswalk that gets you to the kind of amenity portion of the proposed redevelopment
Okay,
here.
so you could walk up that to the parking lot and then
Yep.
walk through the parking lot to get to that other side?
Yes, that's right. But if you were trying to come down this way, that's all I was saying, is that this grade change is significant in a
Okay.
short run, so we have a hard time without a lot of switchbacks getting an accessible route there.
You would be able to do that?
Yeah, that would be, you'd need an elevator, pretty
Okay.
much.
Couple quick questions?
Sure thing.
Just whimsical, first one. The representation of the river, is that accurate for depth or anything, or is it just?
We don't have a lot of detailed information on the depth, that's
Just
more
checking.
graphic, yeah,
I
thank
figured.
you. Yep.
All right, I think everything looks really nice. I would ask maybe a possibility if the northern trail is leading just to the natural grid easement, then maybe there'd be a node right there for a quick place where people could stop, as opposed to just this pointless dead end. There might be something, just as a suggestion.
Sure, yeah.
And then from the path going up to the Main Street Bridge, that would not be an ADA walkway, right? That would not be the 5%. Does that meet 5%?
We've got to test that out. It's possible that it could. We need more grade information on the actual edge of that bridge location. It's sort of off property a little bit. Ideally, we would be able to. We're showing a switchback here, anticipating that maybe with a long enough run, we could get that to work from an accessible standpoint. But if not, we've got this connection here, and someone could come through the site to that.
And then if memory serves me correctly, for ADA ramps going into buildings, there's a slope of 2%. But this is a walkway, so the 5% is within the...
So you can do a ramp at up to 8.3% if you have landings and handrails.
Right.
At 5% or less, we can do it without handrails, and that's the intent here.
Excellent.
This would be, we're showing it at 3% right now, so that we're not even up against that 5% max.
Excellent, yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions on the Riverwalk?
Last question. On
Yes,
the
sir.
the easement that you're working out with the town, how much of that trail that you're showing us there is gonna be in the easement area that the town has access to?
Right, so we don't yet have a plan that shows the easement area. I mean, because these are kind of schematics, not plans yet. So,
That's gonna be the exhibit A that's currently blank?
yes, exactly. So we have the deed of trail easement drafted. And by the way, in Massachusetts, we have that recreational use statute that protects property owners that deed easements for recreation purposes if they're not charging a fee. So we expect we'll benefit from that. And that you might inform National Grid when you approach them of that statutory protection. But yes, that would be Exhibit A. We don't have the what's to be conveyed to the town as available for public access. I'm hearing this from Matt for the first time as he walks us through that plan, so now I'm getting a sense of what it's gonna be. Those landing areas, probably that deck lookout area, I would expect.
Would be part of the easement.
Yeah, and then
access
to the end of the property as well.
Yeah, our idea was that the riverfront would be the easement, so we'd carry it all the way to the public street and then along the river. And the goal would be potentially that down the road, it would be added to by other property owners. But the great thing is we're introducing people to the river that today don't see that as an amenity and don't see that as a place they might go. And that benefits us because it brings more people to our project. So it's self-serving to some degree, but and I've done this before, by the way, on rivers, very successfully.
So we've got the draft, but not the plan. So it's one of those rare instances where the lawyer is ahead of the engineer. You don't get that very often.
And this plan, this highlights the property line of what we control here, and you can see that, the access up to Main Street and the access beyond this line through the power easement, that still needs to be obviously worked out with those abutting property owners, so that our influence of what we can really build is within this zone, but this would be ideally the future connections to those adjacent properties.
Who is the property owner of where that switchback is proposed?
I'll have to double check that for you. There's sort of a piece right here.
And that's not part of the
outside
Dunkin'
of our
Donuts property?
outside of our property. But I'll check that and get back to you on that.
Okay.
Matt, is this area designated floodplain, and if so, does that require any special permitting from the town and/or FEMA?
The floodplain would definitely include some of this area. To further define that, I think we've obviously got buffer zone impacts from a Conservation Commission standpoint, so those are all things we'll be working through once we get to that stage of permitting.
So if the planning board needs to take any action on the floodplain issues, we should probably do it at the same time we're acting on the special permit.
Right.
So if you would let us know whether there's
Okay.
anything that's required on our end for that.
Yep.
Yeah, I was just gonna make one final comment, so, just so the board is clear, the access to the southern end of the proposed Riverwalk is really beyond your control, because you don't own that.
This area
that
here,
right
correct.
there. That's gonna be the big question, is how does the town implement that?
Eminent domain.
Any other questions from the board?
All good?
We'll check the title of that other parcel and maybe approach that owner for that switchback.
So the next time we come before you, I would expect we would have our peer review on the storm complete, as well as the traffic, and the easements agreed to. So all that'll be done. As far as the owners of the other property, I'm not quite sure how we handle that, but we can work with the town to figure out who that is and what might be done. When we bought the mill originally, we made sure we bought the lot that took us all the way down to the river for this idea of introducing the river back into the project. And then with the TIF district we've set up, going across the river into Webster, that's just a great add to it. So my hope is we get development on both sides of the river. That's it, thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, have a
Set
great
date
night.
for a continuance?
Yeah, so, what's your time frame looking like? Do you think you need another 2 weeks, or do you need
I
4
think
weeks?
it's longer than that, because I think, now they'll do the stormwater revisions, and then we want to give the peer reviewers time to look at it and come back with any questions that they do. So I don't have a date for you. I think we'll wait till they can get back, and we'll communicate with you guys on, we're gonna do as quickly as we can, but, I wanna give everybody a chance to review it.
Why don't we set a date for the second meeting in February, and then if you're not ready, we'll just.
Yeah, we can.
I think that's fine.
We
Second
could
date
do,
in
we could
February
do
would
4
be the
weeks out,
23rd.
and then,
Yeah.
that way, there we have a placeholder for you.
That's great, if we can do that, and then we'll try to hit that, but again, I do wanna make sure all the peer reviews are done and we're good on that, because that's not anything I'm gonna impact, really.
And if you need more time, you can just let us know.
Yeah.
Request
We'll
a
do
Yep.
continuance
Is that all right with
ahead
you?
of time, sure.
Okay.
So, did you say that was the 23rd?
23rd.
February 23rd.
All right, well, we thank everybody for everybody's input, and we think we're making some good progress.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Oh, okay, 10 minutes to go.
Yeah. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is a continuation of a public hearing on Fish Road definitive plan. That's up for 8 PM, so we're a little bit early on that. So why don't we take some of the standard business out of order here? and jump down to discussion status reports on finishing construction of and acceptance of uncompleted, unaccepted subdivision streets, including Pierpont Estates, Rocky Hill Estates, Piasta Road, Country View Estates, Eisenhower Drive, Tobin Farm Estates, Lyon Estates, Legacy Landing, Country Club Estates, SEP Solar, Oxford Ave, and JD&D on 24 Oxford Ave.
I don't really have any new information. We've asked Jeff Walsh to submit proposals for determining the cost to complete Tobin Farms and Partridge Hill Road.
Okay.
So I've sent him our existing information, and then he'll get back to us with his cost to do that work. And the plan being that we would have an estimate for construction and whatever engineering would be required, that we would go to town meeting for appropriation, which would then be turned back on the homeowners as a betterment at the end of the project, so that the net cost to the town would be zero.
Okay, so, just him doing his analysis of what's needed, who's paying for that out of pocket?
The town administrator has a way to pay for that. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but
Okay,
he's assured me that he's got
Okay.
got a way to pay for Jeff to do that
okay,
analysis.
Yeah.
That cost, though, if the residents decide to go forward,
would be added in.
included in the betterment, so
Right.
we get paid back for that.
Yeah. All right,
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Sure.
a question for the town planner. Piasta Road, that's pretty much finished and done, isn't it?
Yes,
Are
we're
Any
just-
issues pertaining to that, or are we at the point where we're ready to recommend?
We're at sort of
it?
the last step in that process. We're waiting for Jeff Walsh to review the as-built plan, and I know the applicant has done the work that was identified in that letter, so Jeff needs to verify that that's complete. At which point, it would come back to the planning board for final sign-off of approval of the subdivision, completeness of the subdivision.
Do we have any timetable for that in terms of when we think that may be coming to us?
I would suspect soon. The intent is to get the road ready for acceptance by town meeting in the spring.
Right.
So we'd want the planning board approval of completeness before that happens.
that would be at the
So it's really sort of at
May town meeting?
Jeff's hands right now, correct.
Okay, so we're coming up to February, so we've got a couple months to get it done.
Correct.
And then 9-acre open space, what's the status on that? Is that going before the selectmen for?
The applicant has decided that he'd like to donate that land to the
Right.
town. That includes the detention basin for the development. He's indicated he'd like that land to be set aside as conservation land,
Conservation land.
in which case the Conservation Commission would have to accept it. If there's no appropriation, I believe the selectmen can just accept the land without having to go to town meeting. So that's, would be part of the whole street acceptance process, I think. There would be a deed to transfer that one parcel to the town, and if the Conservation Commission agrees to accept it as conservation, that would be part of that transfer.
Is there a reason why you could think of why the Conservation Commission wouldn't want to accept the land?
Well, it's, it's a single piece, it's 9 acres, it doesn't really connect to any other conservation land in the area.
Plus, they'd have to maintain the stormwater basin back there, wouldn't they?
That would become, if it's, no, when a street subdivision's accepted, the town accepts the detention basins. So it becomes a town highway department maintenance responsibility.
Even though it's on conservation land?
There would have to be an agreement
Okay.
that would allow the highway department to go in and maintain that.
Access it and maintain it.
Right.
But the other, I don't know if this is even a possibility, but I was just thinking the other option, if for some reason the Conservation Commission didn't want to accept it as conservation land, we do have the Dudley Land Trust, maybe they would accept it?
Right, you do that as well.
Okay. All right. Okay. Do you have anything you wanna, we got 5 more minutes, do you have anything on the planner's plate we could talk about now?
Richard, at the last meeting, had mentioned the Shared Streets and Spaces program, which is a state grant program, which provides, small amounts of money to provide amenities around streets for, outdoor seating of restaurants, for example, or pedestrian access. And interestingly, Faye Walt from the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission had sent me an idea for that program for the Airport Road, Dudley Hill Road intersection, which is one of the high priorities in our prioritization plan. So I've gotten back to her and said, yes, we'd be interested in having you do something for us on that, with that grant program. So they seem willing to do that. I haven't gotten really any details on it yet,
Okay.
but it did seem to be a pretty good fit. It's not sort of a major, reconstruction of the intersection. It's what can you do, with striping and signage and maybe some landscaping or whatever to make that area less hazardous for pedestrians. So it seems to be a pretty good fit for the program.
Okay,
Good.
thanks.
Little steps.
Right. I wanted to mention that we do have a number of zoning amendments that are possible for town meeting. I think maybe next meeting we should set aside some time to
Yeah,
go over those.
I know a lot of people have come in and asked for relief. I'm thinking back to the gentleman from 131 we talked to.
Right.
We also talked to, there was another person we talked to.
The Healy's?
Well,
Corbin Road?
the two women that were at the last meeting that were talking about.
The Conservation District, right?
Yeah, and
We do have the marijuana cultivation overlay district. I haven't heard from Mrs. Doherty if she wants to try again or not.
okay,
But there's also, in our aquifer protection overlay district, the Water and Sewer Department may ask the planning board to accept the Zone 2 delineation, which is the state-approved aquifer recharge area for the town's wells, rather than what we have now, which is a interim wellhead protection area, which is kind of a broad half-mile radius. So I'm meeting with them next week to talk about that zoning amendment. So that may be another one that will come in,
yeah, so I could see the potential for multiple,
right? And then
Articles.
the board might have some of its own
yeah.
that you'd like to try. If you have any thoughts on that, we can try to squeeze something in. But we have a couple already, so I'm not sure, how many more we want, but one or two others, if you're interested.
Would that be everything on your planner's plate?
Mhm.
Okay. Maybe we could just, if everyone be in agreement, we take just a couple-minute break before 8 o'clock, and then we'll start the reconvene in the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to call the engineer.
Yep.
So he can participate via phone.
Do I hear something?
session at 8 o'clock for the continuation of the public hearing on the Fish Road definitive plan.
Good evening.
Jonathan?
Okay, so I believe we answered most of Jeff Walsh's questions in regards to the definitive plan. I think it seems like there's a couple small items we need to button up, correct? So, I guess the board's discretion
The
on.
board, excuse me, the board should have Jeff's letter that came in this afternoon.
Section
Where's that?
Section E.
Okay,
Were
section
you,
E.
were you copied on this letter from
Yes,
Jerry?
yep,
So you have it all?
yep.
So you see there's still quite a few things that are kind of in question that
Yep.
haven't been addressed. Is it possible that your engineer, given some more time, could get all these, everyone addressed?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest one was the easement for the drain line, which there was a existing, well, it was gonna be a proposed retaining wall on the cultivation site, but we removed that retaining wall, so I think that's gonna alleviate that biggest hurdle.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is Mr. Lavoy going to join us on the phone?
He didn't pick up the phone.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to try him again?
Yeah, and I think
Leave it to the chair.
yeah, you can try them again, Bill.
Okay.
The added comments on the last page 6 of 6 for this week's comments, 35, 36, and 37. The first two have to do with the hydrology with the pond.
Yep,
So I think if that could be explained.
okay.
And then I think you just mentioned the retaining wall, so that's 37. You think that's gonna go away?
Yes.
Okay.
You wanna try calling Peter again? Oh, you got him, okay. I just tried texting him too.
Because your engineer, Peter's letter comes on January 25th, so his letter was published the day before Jeff Walsh's comment, so he really hasn't had a chance to address all that.
What's that again?
The letter that we have in our file from Summit Engineering from Peter Lavoy is dated January 25th, so he submitted that letter to us the day before Jeff Walsh's comments came out.
Okay,
So he didn't really have a chance to address all of the comments.
okay, that's fine. Yeah, I thought he resent it in the day after the last meeting, but I must have been mistaken.
Yes, you had, Peter had sent in a letter
25th.
for the work that he did to address Jeff's comments.
On the 13th, I think.
Submitted the revised plan.
Yep.
Which Jeff reviewed, and then submitted this letter in response to the changes that Peter had made previously. So
Right.
this is the second peer review letter from Jeff.
So the second from Jeff is the 26th.
Correct.
Correct, yeah.
26th.
So this letter from Peter Lavoy, from the 25th, this is just the waivers?
So
I don't have that
the
letter.
response is dated January 14th, so the next page,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, is Peter Lavoy's follow-up to Jeff Walsh's initial comments,
Okay.
indicating that he, tried to address all those concerns. So that was what Jeff was working on in the letter that he sent today.
Right.
The letter that you're referring to on September 25 is the list of
January.
waivers. It now contains seven waiver requests, which is the latest number that we have.
So what is on the 25th, obviously could not or would not address, or was it identified as issues on the 26th? Just by virtue of the timing of nothing else.
Jeff did make a comment on one of those waivers, I forget which one. Hello, Peter, I'm gonna call you on our conference number, okay? So hang up and then pick up on when I call you. Okay, thanks, okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm in.
Yep.
Hi, Peter, Bill Scanlon. You are on the speaker here at the planning board meeting. We're talking about the Fish Road definitive plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to repeat that question
Yeah,
for
so-
Peter?
So Peter, we were looking at your letter for the, dated January 25th for the waivers,
Yes,
and we noticed that in our, there was a letter sent out from our consultant town engineer Graves, Jeff Walsh of Graves Engineering, and on the 26th. So obviously, if you had something on this list of waivers from the 25th, maybe it couldn't have addressed what's been mentioned here on the 26th, but I'm just looking at like number one on the letter from Jeff Walsh, the 26th letter. Do you have a copy of this letter, by the way, from Jeff Walsh on the 26th?
I do have that. Let me get it.
So number one is talking about a waiver. The waiver request pertaining to the pavement width should be revised from right-of-way to pavement.
Yes.
And it says the waiver request was not revised.
Right, I thought I had changed that, but I went back and looked at it and I did not change that. But so I will change that, to update that waiver
Okay.
request. He also mentioned another waiver that was my misunderstanding regarding the vertical curve on the road, not the length of the road. So I need to change that one as well. I forget which number that is.
Number 9.
Okay, so you could, if we gave you some more time, you could go through this letter from Jeff on the 26th and make all the corrections that are necessary, you think?
Yes, I could. Yep,
Okay,
I can do that.
all right. So, that being said, would you wanna just continue this to our next meeting?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I was wondering what your feeling is on the waivers. We talked about those in the preliminary plan, and then there's been, I think, 2 new ones added since that.
So,
We could talk about that tonight to see if you have any concerns about the waivers, or if you're inclined to grant the waivers, then that would let the applicant know that they're okay.
So, Peter, you would just be changing the verbiage of some of these waivers, but the 7 waivers that you currently have submitted would stay, correct?
That is correct. Yes, it would just be verbiage.
Okay, so let's just go through the waivers quickly. You've got the first one here at road cross-sections. Request to allow the road cross-section instead of Town of Dudley standard cross-section because of the limited area at the beginning of the proposed roadway. So that's, that waiver would stand. That's number 1. Number 2, widths, minimum rights of, right-of-way width. Request allowing a 40-foot wide right-of-way instead of the 50-foot right-of-way due to the existing property lines.
Correct.
Number 3, streets with minimum pavement width. Request allowing a 20-foot right-of-way instead of the 30-foot right-of-way.
Yeah, so that's the one that right-of-way needs to be taken out and put as pavement.
Pavement, right. Existing paved with, existing also due to property lines. That was number 3. Number 4, we have open space, parks and playgrounds, allowing no proposed open space for the proposed project due to a minimum of area in the existing parcel and location of the development. That was 4. 5, we have sidewalks. Request allowing no sidewalks instead of sidewalks on both sides because of minimal area and parcel layout and no other sidewalks in the area. That was 5. Number 6, we have a dead end length, allowing a 90-foot cul-de-sac instead of the minimum 200-foot cul-de-sac.
That one right there needs to be, the verbiage needs to be changed, because that pertains to the vertical curve, which he was talking about, and not the length of
Okay.
the dead end. That's the one I misunderstood.
Okay. And then number 7 was electric, allowing no streetlights to be installed on along the new roadway.
That is correct, yep.
So those are the 7 proposed waiver requests.
Yeah, so, if I may, Mr. Chair, just for some clarity too, number 4 for the parks, we agreed to make a donation to the park out here, so we did purchase some picnic tables and stuff for the park, and we were gonna make a donation towards some repairs, but it's since been closed. But we did purchase the picnic tables already.
Okay,
And then the sidewalks, what we did is in lieu of placing sidewalks in the cul-de-sac, we agreed to place them along Fish Road from West Dudley Road up to our entrance into the quarry cultivation site.
okay. All right. So does any board members have any other questions on the waivers that they're asking for?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through the chair, Mr. Lavoy, this is Steve Wetruba, Dudley Planning Board. I have a question on the new waiver number 6, the dead-end length change. Is that going to in any way change the diameter of the end of the cul-de-sac?
No, it's not. Nope, that has to do with the vertical curve where we're blending in the existing road with the
Right.
new road.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to check to make sure this wasn't gonna be something the fire chief needed to look at.
No, what would happen is it's just making this curve tighter, so it would have been normally flared out a little bit more, and more accepting to the 30-foot right away rather than a
Okay.
20-foot.
All right, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Gary, do you want to read number 7 too, so that's on the record?
I did read number
Did you
7.
read number 7?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what I would suggest is that Peter inscribe the waivers on the definitive plan. So they're right on one of the sheets, however he feels it's best done, so that when it's recorded, the waivers are written on the plan and it's clear, what the requirements are.
And they're signed off.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, did you hear that, Peter?
Yes, you want me to add it to the plan, so I'll add it to the cover sheet.
Okay, that would be good. And you'll have all the correct verbiage.
Correct.
Yep. Any other
Our
questions?
next meeting is the 9th of February. With this, I'm not sure what our agenda is looking like as we go forward to the 9th. Is this something that we would look to readdress on the 9th, you think, Bill?
Yes, it would be convenient for the board to do it that night.
All right, would
Yeah.
Mr. Lavoy be in what? That date?
Yes. Yes, I will.
February 9th? Okay, so we'll put you on the agenda for February 9th as a continuation. Fish Road definitive plan.
This is a request.
Thank you.
Did we want to ask if there was any public comment on this, why we're here?
Yes.
Would anybody from the public like to make comments on this project while we're here? If you could come up and sign in, sir?
Oops, sorry.
Is there a sign-up sheet?
Good evening. Paul Lyons, 15 Fish Road, Dudley. And last week, we received a email from Fish Road LLC with the definitive plan and the water tests and various other documents. And I have some questions, I have some comments I'd like to address to the board, please.
This is for the 8:15 meeting, isn't it?
Yeah, it sounds like we're getting into.
Is this,
That was part of the cultivation special permit, not the definitive plan.
Right, so I guess we should have clarified what we were asking about public comments.
so we have tonight we have two public hearings for Fish Road. One is for just the definitive plan of the roadway, which is what we're on right now.
Okay.
The next one that we're gonna talk about tonight is the marijuana cultivation site that's gonna be built at the end of this roadway.
Okay, then addressing that, which I brought up before, and I believe other people have, I requested that there would be something in the definitive plan saying that as long as Fish Road LLC owns it, there will be no access road, no pathway from the cul-de-sac into the property, basically in writing, to make sure no one can just, no trucks, no deliveries, nothing can just go up the cul-de-sac and then cross over into the parking area or into any kind of driveway, and thereby bypass the gravel road. I don't know what you officially call it now, but the dirt road, gravel road that has the access of the back of the property to where, according to the design, the parking lot will be. So that would be the only thing I would have to say on this, and bring up again that if I had mentioned previously, quite a while ago, that if the property sold in 5 years, 10 years, a new owner could say, hey, I'm going to put a road in, I'm going to put a driveway in, and everybody can just come up Fish Road and go through the cul-de-sac.
So you would like the only access for that cul-de-sac, the only access on the cul-de-sac would be to the house and to the barn that's existing there now?
Yeah, I think you
I mean, I think once the town accepts the cul-de-sac, the town would have to grant a curb cut permit anyway, right? So, I mean, it could be denied at that point.
I think he wants it landlocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the point being that if the,
You gonna landlock it? Like, you're not gonna extend the cul-de-sac in the future?
No, we can't. I mean, it's, yeah.
So it'll be landlocked.
Be landlocked, right.
So
That's why we bought that other right-of-way, is to pretty much eliminate
That
having to put a,
cul-de-sac will be the
you know,
end of it.
access way in here.
I'm sorry?
Once it's landlocked, the cul-de-sac will be the end of the road.
Right.
But is there a process down the road where that could be changed? And will the neighbors, the residents on Fish Road be notified if somebody applied to change the access to that cul-de-sac?
Well, it appears to me that the cultivation facility will occupy most of this property. There'll be another lot 2, which might be available. Is that correct? Is lot 2
Yes,
of another potential development site?
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, that's,
So there's really no opportunity to extend this road any further.
no.
It's only going to serve 2 lots. And there's no opportunity to make it longer,
You're talking about the cul-de-sac.
the cul-de-sac, correct?
So you're saying legally there is no way to put a road or a driveway into that cul-de-sac?
Say that again?
Legally, there is no way that there could be a driveway or a road or any kind of path to go from the cul-de-sac farther into the property.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't know whether that would be possible or not.
That's my only concern
This
with
plan-
that particular.
Doesn't show any
No.
access off of the cul-de-sac.
No.
But the point being, 3, 5, 10 years from now, it could be changed.
Perhaps.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, do you know how we could word something like that, Bill, or is it even possible for us to ask for that? I mean, I think what Mr. Andrulevich said, it would be, you know, if there was to be an additional driveway off the cul-de-sac, it would have to come back to the town for a curb cut permit,
Right.
and the town could just say no.
But will the homeowners be notified of that so they can speak to the issue?
I think we could put a condition
Yeah.
in the decision to that effect.
That any future curb cuts be
I mean-
be done through a public hearing?
Yeah, we'd have to come back to the planning
I
board.
can say, I mean, we're the property owner as well as owners invested into the cultivation site, so it's 2 separate entities. As the property owner, we have no intention of ever selling the land,
Okay.
so.
But would you mind if we put a condition on the plan that,
see
condition for
why.
acceptance,
Yeah,
that there'd
fine.
be no more curb cuts allowed on the cul-de-sac?
Sure. As long as I can have my two for the, well,
Yeah,
the barn
for the
and the
barn and the
house.
house,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, is there something we would wanna get an opinion in town council, how this should be done, so that it's legal? Yes. Because we're imposing something that I've never encountered before.
Yes, road frontage,
And I think what Mr. Lyons is asking for, Mr. Chairman, if I may, is he wants something that's gonna be in perpetuity. That,
Goes with the
if
land.
If the current owner happened to transfer that property 50 years from now, he wants something that's gonna be binding on the new owner. I suspect, Mr. Wetruba's point, that might be a little
How do we have
beyond
the right
our.
to impose that?
Right. you know,
But if it's,
where we
if
stand
it's a
on
condition
that.
of approval and they accept it,
But is it binding on any successors purchase, a future person purchase?
I think it would only be binding to Mr. Andrelevich
yeah.
now.
Third party wouldn't have nothing to do with it.
It wouldn't hurt to get an opinion from council, just to make sure that we do that properly.
But if, may I speak?
Sure.
But if the board didn't want to go that far, I would be happy as long as there's a condition that the homeowners have to be notified if there is an application to change that cul-de-sac so that the homeowners may speak to the issue. If the board doesn't wish to get into legal matters, just notify, have something in there to notify the homeowners so they can come and speak to the issue. And I would think that would cover everything. And that would be fair on both sides, just to address the issue.
Be in the form, Mr. Chairman, of a public hearing?
yeah.
Should there be application for a curb cut?
A modification of the plan.
Modification of the plan to require a public hearing, should that occur?
If that would be easier, I would think that would cover everything.
Probably be cheaper.
Yeah. So, yeah, save the
Time
town
you dial
money.
up a lawyer, you know, the
Right.
meter's running.
Well, not to muddy the waters, but that would still only get notification to the abutters. Which there's only the town of Dudley and one house abutting that property.
You'd have to go 500 feet. But, yeah, maybe one or two houses. Isn't it 500 feet, Bill, that they, from the property line?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lyons. All right, so for the roadway, we'll have a continuance.
Do we have any additional?
Oh, is there any other additional comments for Fish Road definitive plan from the audience?
Nope.
Okay. All right, so seeing that, we'll have a continuance on the Fish Road definitive plan to February 9th.
I think 7:15, I think that could be the first.
That could be the first one? Right. Okay, the next item on our agenda, we're a little bit late, is the public hearing for the marijuana cultivation special permit, Fish Road LLC, 40 Fish Road.
How are you?
Should Oh, yes.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, give me a minute to help him set up his presentation.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you very much.
And do we still need Mr. Lavoy on the phone, or,
John, you still need the engineer?
I think we're good for now.
okay.
Good evening, Mr. LaVoy.
Mr. Lavoy, did you hear that?
I don't think
What?
we likely don't need you, so if you wanna, you can certainly do that.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, can I listen?
Oh, sure, you can if
Yeah.
you want to.
Okay, I'd like to listen.
All right, if you have any questions, just speak up.
Okay.
Do I need to activate it?
I'm not sure. Hold a second. Can you go into your, like, Windows Explorer, or File Manager program?
Here we go.
Okay, double click, sure for Windows or your Mac. Okay. That's doing something down there. You're good to go.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Bill.
read the public hearing notice?
Yes. That's under... Okay. In accordance with the provisions of section 3.15, medical and adult use marijuana establishments, subsection 3.1506, application requirements, which require a special permit and site plan approval of the Dudley zoning bylaw, the Dudley Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, January 26th at 8:15 p.m. in the Dudley Municipal Complex, room 321A, EMC Veterans Memorial Hall, 71 West Main Street, Dudley, Mass. 01571, on the application of DJT Properties LLC to construct a marijuana grow facility containing 169,860 square feet and 50 parking spaces. The applicant has a provisional license from the Cannabis Control Commission for a Tier 6 cultivation facility to grow up to 50,000 square feet of canopy. The property is located in Industrial 130 and Residential 87 zoning districts. Marijuana cultivation is allowed by special permit of the Planning Board in the Industrial 130 district. Copies of the plan and application are on file in the Dudley Planning Board office and the Town Clerk's office, both of which are located at the Dudley Municipal Complex, 71 West Main Street, Dudley, Mass. The Planning Board will receive public input at the hearing. If you wish to comment but are unable to attend, you may submit written comments to the Planning Board office via email to planner@dudleyma.gov before 4:30 p.m. on January 25th, 2022. Guy Horn, Chairman. This article was run twice in the newspaper on January 12th and again on January 19th, 2022. Okay, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for having us tonight. My name is Nick Adamopoulos, here on behalf of Fish Road LLC. You guys already know John. So we just want to kind of quickly give you a quick presentation about the project and then answer any questions that you or anyone else has. Based upon the last time I was here, I think getting to the part where you guys can ask us questions might be maybe the more meat and bones of this. So we'll just give you an overview and then leave it to the board's discretion. So just as a points of clarity for the benefits to the community if this is to move forward, we've already entered a community host agreement with the Select Board for a 5-year community host agreement. Under that, the town is entitled to a 3% of all revenues that are generated from this facility, which is the highest amount under state law. And that would take into effect once the operation becomes fully licensed. We're looking at potentially, at this point, somewhere between 25 or lower of workers. And these would be full-time positions, well-paying jobs because it's skilled labor that are going to have to get trained to be able to handle this cultivation. Similar to the package that we had recommended when Chase Road came before you, there's going to be benefit packages for all these workers, including healthcare, and there's going to be hiring preference to individuals that provide resumes from the town of Dudley. As was mentioned in the notice, we do have a Tier 6 license, which would allow between 40,000 to 50,000 square feet of cultivation. DJT Properties has acquired 40 Fish Road. There's a lease between that entity and Fish Road LLC. And the access way behind the property was purchased after the community outreach meeting to alleviate any concerns that ultimately were raised by the abutters at that point concerning traffic. And we did have a full traffic study done, and we'll get into that later. So at this point, we're working to partner with entities that have high-end sources of genetics so that we can grow product here that's going to generate a need for it in the industry. At this point, as more and more cultivations do come on, it is becoming product driven, and being able to have those genetics and be able to grow product that is wanted by the general population is becoming the more norm. And the goal here is just to partner with local cannabis businesses to wholesale this to either manufacturers so they can extract the product and make end products, or to wholesale it directly to retail stores to be sold as flower. So we have met with the chief of police. His letter of approval, it was inside the packet that was submitted with our application. He reviewed our security plan, It is heavily regulated by the CCC with the cameras and the lighting that are required here. Ongoing camera systems accessible by both the CCC and the police. There has to be backup storage for a minimum of 90 days so that if anything were to occur, there's access further so the CCC can just make sure that individuals that are registered to be on that property are there. And we're utilizing a company called Citronics, which is well established here in Massachusetts. They've done everything from retail stores to manufacturing to large-scale cultivations, greenhouse projects, and outdoor grows. So they've done the entire assortment of projects that are allowed here in Massachusetts. The chief of police did go through the entire proposed security plan with them. We answered any questions that he has. And that, once again, that letter is inside the packet and was provided to the CCC. We did have a traffic study done by Van Nuys and Associates. Once again, we are proposing to avoid traffic on Fish Road beyond that little part to get to the access road that goes behind it. And once again, that property was purchased so that there's no issues in the future about that property, that road not being accessible by the property owner and Fish Road LLC. So the goal is to take all this traffic off the main road so that, you know, the abutters and the people living on that road and the residences there do not see any traffic coming for our employees. This is not a retail establishment, so any traffic uptake on this is much lower than if it was a retail store. You're talking about employees that may be on 1 or 2 shifts. The goal here is to stagger some of those shifts so that there's not a large amount of traffic coming in and out at one point. I believe that the traffic study asked for stop signs to be placed at both the end of the access road and at the end of Fish Road. We already have those signs, so once there's a thaw and we can actually get those into the ground, I believe John will have those put in, just in accordance with what Van Nuys said would help alleviate any of the traffic concerns there. But once again, we are diverting all the traffic behind the properties, and the parking lot is ultimately in the back of the property too, so all of our employees will be going back there. That's where our security be maintained to make sure that only employees or pickup or delivery trucks are having access to that road. Odor, we did supply you with an odor memo. We are utilizing the same system as an indoor grow in a brick and mortar facility. We'll show you pictures in a little bit, but while these are technically greenhouses, both the sides and the ends are hard. I mean, the only part that's really a greenhouse in effect is, at this point, the roof. So being able to implement these HVACs and charcoal filtration systems and air collection systems are similar to what we placed into a brick and mortar facility. But due to the fact that it actually is a greenhouse, we can even take it a step farther and use Fogco, which is a misting system, and I believe there was a letter that we included in our packet to you, and we'll show you some information later on about that. But what this does is a continuous type of small molecule water mist into the air that also has odor blocking molecules within it. So it actually captures any sort of odor in the air prior to it even going through the charcoal filtration or HVAC systems. Similar to what was presented to you previously when I was here for the Chase Road, there's HVAC systems for each different greenhouse here because there can be no cross-contamination between the different greenhouses. The goal here is to make sure that there is no cross-pollination, that we're able to protect those and keep those as clean as possible, because if anything were to come in or out, it could really put the product in danger, and if that were to test dirty or if there was any mold or mildew that got onto those plants, you'd lose a whole harvest, and that's substantial amounts of money to the owner. So it's not only for the benefit of making sure that we're a good neighbor and there's no odor issues, but also to make sure that we're maintaining that property in a way that allows for those that crop to be grown in a clean and safe manner that will test properly under the CCC's regulations. And then ultimately, we'll go through energy in a little bit, but we're doing everything to meet the CCC's requirements and the state requirements. The CCC, every time they do a regulation update, focuses on energy consumption by these cultivations. So we're going to be doing staggered lighting schedules, ultimately based upon the fact that this is a greenhouse. The goal here is to take advantage of as much of the sunlight as possible. We're gonna use high efficiency chillers and boilers above the minimum levels so that we can try to lower costs there. And if there's any recovery that we can possibly do from, maintaining any sort of condensation within or taking advantage, once again, of any of the natural elements, the goal here is to do that, one, because we're required to under law, but two, the cost of energy for these facilities can be extremely high. And if there's any technology that continues to improve, as this becomes more of a national type of trend, it is in the energy sector, because anyone that's growing understands that their two biggest costs are water and energy. So as John has up there and up here, ultimately, the plan here is this is what the property looks like right now as it sits. And the goal here is to, behind the existing barn, kind of down the hill, is to place these greenhouses. On the left-hand side, there is a long one. As you can see, there's like 3 rows of greenhouses, but then the head house, that's where all the equipment's gonna be kept, where product would be coming in and out. And then the greenhouses would be ultimately where the crop would be getting grown from, the stage where it's getting put in as a seed all the way through the vegetative and mother stages, until it's ultimately harvested, dried, and then sent out for either, once again, as a flower base to a retail store or to a manufacturer. For your information, there is no manufacturing being done on this facility. So once the product is ultimately harvested and dried, it's coming off the property and being either delivered to one of those manufacturers or to the end user at the retail store. So there'll be no manufacturing done here. This is totally just a cultivation type of scenario. And then we put all the parking down the bottom, once again, coming off that access road, so that Fish Road was not affected by this applicant whatsoever. Just a Google Earth of ultimately what the property looks like in the area around where it says 40 Fish Road. That's where those greenhouses will be put. And once again, there is an elevation change there. So it is down a little bit. And just so any of the abutters or for your information, there is a slide where we'll just show you kind of what the light system looks like and the light deprivation, but also due to the fact that it's kind of below the rest of the road, that will stop any sort of light pollution that any of the abutters or town may see from this, because it's not at the level of everyone else. But there are some images we can show you about how good those deprivation systems really are. Just once again, just what the proposed greenhouse scenario locations would look like, with the long head house on the left-hand side, where that would allow the employees to get access, get cleaned, locker rooms for the employees, offices if there's any staff down there, and then ultimately the greenhouses are put into a maze so that the product can just keep moving from one greenhouse to the other as it gets through its different life cycles. These are just sketches, so we could at least just show you kind of what they look like. The wording on this does not apply here, but we just wanted to give you an idea. So once again, the back and front are hard end. They're not tarp, or they're not translucent. They are fully hard, and all the sides are also. And then the top part is ultimately the part where it is a greenhouse with the accessibility to take in that light, so that it's directly on the plants, and then the light deprivation systems are on there. So this is a facility that was being built out that one of our engineers is working on, so we could at least give you an idea of how these look. But once again, as you can see, the back end over here is a hard surface. The side hasn't been put on yet, but the top part will be the part that's ultimately taking in the sunlight. And once again, as you can see, this is kind of more of a full image here. HVAC systems on the side and the back of the building, with the translucent part on the top. Just so you know, here's an interior view. This is from Leicester, Massachusetts. Cultivate, which is another cannabis operation, has a mixed-use facility on their property. They just built out their cultivation, I think of a little bit bigger size. I think theirs was either 60 to 70,000 square feet. But once again, as you can see, both the back and the sides are hard. All the misting, the lighting systems are up, and then you have the light deprivation systems, which are rolled up at this point. They just allow the access to the sunlight during the daytime. We did have a water study done, and that study was provided to you. And we do have Mr. LaFramboise here to answer any questions that the board may have. But we not only had the well test done to the well that's existing on the property right now, but we also had it tied to the property that directly abuts the property. Ran it for, I believe, 48 hours, if not long.
96, 4 days, 4 days?
72 hours to see if there was any change, and ultimately, what we saw, there was no change to the well that was directly on our property, nor on the abutter's property. And we're well aware that in the event that there are more than 25 employees that take part in this facility, that we then have to go to DEP and start the whole public water process. So that has its own limitations on it, so that they can definitely make sure. But we wanted to at least get some information to bring to you that shows that even with a huge pump test that was, I believe, over the amount that we'd be taking on a daily basis.
For the first phase, yeah.
There was no direct correlation to either the well on site nor the direct abutter. But once again, if we do go beyond that 25 employees, we'll have to open up that with DEP, become a public water source. And there are restrictions on that to make sure that there's no change that are affecting anyone around us, and that that well is protected in a manner to make sure there's no contamination. So once again, I did talk about the fog system, which is the misting system. As you can see in the top up here, you can kind of see the mist coming down, and that's an ongoing process, which is kind of unique to these greenhouses, just because you're not kind of stuck inside a brick and mortar where there could be a lot of potential mold buildup, because you have more air kind of flowing with sunlight coming in and absorbing all that. But this misting system is not just water. Once again, it has molecules of odor mitigation built into it, so it can get that odor before it even hits the HVAC systems or the charcoal filtration systems. I believe we have an SOP that says that those the filters on those have to be changed at least once every 30 days. If you don't change them every 30 days, you can kind of get in trouble. Similar to what may be happening in Webster right now. So, that's kind of in the news, and kind of just to let you know, it's really not the facility, it's that they've just stopped changing their filters. And we have an SOP in place. I believe there was a condition placed, at least on the one on Chase Ave, that we would expect if this moves forward, we place on this, that, directly says that there is an issue with odor, that there's a time period for us to deal with it. If not, then any cost that the town would bring in to have something brought to us would be absorbed by us. But also that, I believe the one on Chase Ave said that all those filtration had to be changed at least every 30 days. And we would adhere to any sort of condition that gets put in place to make sure that those filters are being changed to absorb that. But we've gone even beyond that, once again, with this misting system, which is been utilized all over the country to directly affect any sort of odor molecules trying to leave.
So in the picture that you're showing right there, that's actually inside of a trash refuse?
Right.
Yes.
So it takes the smell of trash away, it should take the smell of the plants away.
It should, and I'm assuming that this just has the misting system on it. The misting would be part one, then you're gonna hit the filtration, then our HVAC systems. So
filters.
there's carbon filtration on,
Right.
would be the first, then it goes through the HVAC, so there's really a lot on there. The goal here is, like I said, there is one that is built up in Leicester right now. I did poll both their selectmen meetings and their planning board meetings to see if there was any sort of complaints that put them on any of their meetings, and I have not seen anything. So it's really, if you have a good owner that's going to make sure that they maintain this facility in the right manner and wants to be a good neighbor, and there are definitely mechanisms that can be put in place to make sure that that odor gets taken care of. And once again, just similar to how the energy is being taken care of in ever-evolving, odor mitigation is also changing. I mean, if you went back maybe 5-6 years ago, when this was out west, I think that a lot of neighbors had issues because the technology was so new. But as the segment of the business has grown, so has the opportunities for odor mitigation energy companies to come in and keep evolving their technology too. And once again, I mean, if there are issues that go to the health department or to the town, we would have to take care of those, but also if the CCC gets wind of that, we put our license in jeopardy too. So not only is an issue that, you know, the town could come back to us and say, we're looking at your host community agreement or doing a, you know, stop order, but we also could have, you know, ramifications with the state. So it, you know, they're always looking over this at the same time to make sure there's no issues with any of their companies. So once again, just energy management, once again, the CCC keeps evolving. You know, they have to file a energy update on a yearly basis with the renewal of their license. We're going to be ultimately utilizing, hopefully, National Grid and using their Mass Save Energy program as we move forward. There is going to be a cost that Fish Road will ultimately, Fish Road, the applicant, just to be clear, may have to incur to get National Grid to update some of the system. All the lining is there, but they just have to run the actual power up. So to start off with, it would likely be generator-based. We've already talked to generator companies about bringing in, you know, not like city-based equipment to make sure that any sort of noise cancellation equipment is put into the equipment itself, but then also a sound wall outside to make sure there's none out there. From the distance from where this property is to the nearest abutter, we've done sound studies on other properties that would ultimately maybe the noise of running a washing machine if you're outside. And then ultimately you working with National Grid to get that updated so that we can utilize the grid itself, and that cost will be incurred by the applicant. Using, you know, once again, high LED lighting inside with dimming control. The lights aren't on 24/7. They're usually on for a 12-hour period and then off for a 12-hour period. And surprisingly, most of the time they're actually on while the light deprivation system is actually open and you're taking in the sunlight, so they work in combination rather than thinking that they're running lights at nighttime. Most of the time those lights will be off in the evening, so those light deprivations are really being used to keep heating and stuff inside the greenhouse itself, rather than even letting out light. They're there to maintain the constant temperature inside the greenhouses. Using chillers, HVAC systems, and, you know, once again, using the National Grid's Mass Save, having them come out yearly and doing their audit, and letting us know if there's anything that they know in the segment that we could be utilizing to upgrade our energy use. So this is kind of just so you guys can see what the deprivation system looks like. On the right-hand side, you can kind of see that they roll out. And the one on the left, I believe, is completely closed at this point. So you can see that there's nothing coming in. But they can, you know, ultimately at nighttime, they close out, and they're not only used just to keep any sort of glow from emanating from it, but also to maintain a constant temperature inside the room, because drastic change in temperatures can greatly affect the plant, and you could lose a harvest if it's changing from day to day. Just further photos of what the Cultivate facility looks like up in Leicester. There's hallways in between the outside wall and kind of where these you know, greenhouse rooms are built, to make sure that the employees have access to materials that they need. On the left-hand side is one of the grow rooms with the you know, the irrigation systems built in. All the electrical and everything is built into them as well. This is not up in Cultivate, but just so that you guys can get a view of kind of what the insides look like. This is a table type of system, so all the plants are placed on these racks and these tables, and kind of grown inside their own type of area, rather than having just one open area for them all to grow into. And then just once again, just so you guys can get an idea, the sides back are fully covered, then the tops of these facilities with, this is a little bit different because it's a fan system where we're using an enclosed HVAC system to make sure that there's no sort of direct, anything getting put directly back out into the system. It's all going through our HVAC system and our filtration systems. And then once again, the light deprivation, this is fully closed. Once again, 12 hours on, 12 hours out. We usually run the lights at the same time that the sun's actually out, because it's just to make sure that we can keep a constant light inside, but just use as much of the sunlight as we can. But the tops on all these are closed, and as you can see, there's no emanation coming from those up. And once again, based upon how this is kind of lower than the current proposed road that was just before us, There'd be no sort of glow to the abutters, and I believe that there was some talk, am I talking out of turn here, about putting up potential trees or something along those lines? To make sure that, it kind of fits into the scenery, so that one direct abutter, if he looks down from his property, would probably see like a tree line rather than even these facilities. And like I said, I just kind of want to get through that quick so we can give you a brief overview, but yeah, I know we're here to take any questions. We do have some individuals here that can talk to some of this. We do have Mr. LaFramboise here if there's water questions, but ultimately, any questions that you or the public have, we'd like to address.
Okay, I'll start and give you guys all a chance. All right, so some of the questions that I just came up with looking at your presentation, the roof at all does not open, correct?
Correct.
It is not.
Okay. The rain that's gonna come down onto that roof, are you gonna recharge it?
Try to collect it and utilize it.
You're gonna try to collect it and utilize it?
As much as we
You're not
can,
gonna
yes.
You're not gonna recharge the aquifer with it?
It is factored, I believe, in the drainage calcs to technically go into the drainage system, so it is designed for it.
Okay.
But we're gonna try to capture as much as possible.
If you could?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's less water you have to take out of it?
Correct.
100%.
All right,
Because it is a gutter connect system, so all the buildings are connected by a gutter,
Yep.
which runs to a main trunk line.
okay. So with the roof not opening, there wouldn't be any possibility of odor escaping through the
Correct.
roof?
Yeah, there's no direct odor leaving out this facility.
You mentioned that you would start this facility off on generator power and then switch to National Grid once they got the,
We've gone as far as we could with National Grid as far as gas and electric goes until it's an actually approved project.
okay,
So with their current timelines, would be pushing the envelope of when we would be, our goal would be to get up and running. So there might be a section where we might, for a couple months, use generators. So we have generator companies supplied us with some data. They're like a city generator, so if a city goes down, they go in, so they're fully dampened inside. They run at 69 decibels or less, so it's really not that loud of a unit.
right, but this wouldn't be permanent, this is just
Temporary, yeah. We will have to keep the generators there permanently because in case there is a power outage, we still have to supply the security system.
Okay, so that was
But they wouldn't be running.
that was my next question.
Yep.
So you will have you'll have a
100%.
generator backup?
We have to.
We have to.
That's state
One,
mandate.
because if there's, let's say, a 2 or 3 day loss of power, we would lose all the plants.
Product,
But
right.
the CC requires that at least the security systems run at full time in case someone ever wanted to cut the power, so we would have to have a backup in place.
Okay, so that's there. My other question that I had was, I did read your report on the well, and I know you have the gentleman that did the test here. If you could maybe elaborate on how much water was drawn out of one well, how far apart the two wells were, what the drop was, or what did they see?
I can't talk about that.
I don't know if I have it on me, hold on. I think I have it in my email.
Hi, good evening. I'm Paul LaFramboise. I'm the president of LaFramboise Water Service in Thompson, Connecticut. As a matter of full disclosure, I'm also the chairman of the planning board in Webster, so he brought up the other facility there. We did do a pump test, this minimum of 72 hours on the well that was existing there. We did, we pumped it, I don't have the data with me, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was coming here. But we ran it at, I believe, seven gallons.
I'm trying to get it right now.
It starts out at 5 and then it goes to 7.
Yeah, go 5 and go to 7, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so it was really a 7 gallon a minute pump test for the 72 hours. It was a constant rate. We monitored with a transducer within that well in order to monitor it to within 1/100 of an inch. We also put a transducer in the closest neighbor, which is Mr.
St. John.
Mr. St. John's well. We saw no discernible change in his well. We did draw down the well that we were using, which is a natural, curvature of the pump test. For the amount of use that was proposed originally, we don't see that there would be any problems with any of the neighboring wells. I talked to one of the other neighbors yesterday, the day before. about, nobody had ever saw any of the changes during the time of the pump test. We were in contact with some of those other people, and nobody saw any changes. The water quality is actually pretty good, with the exception of,
I think high in arsenic or arsenic, yeah.
yeah, it's not as high as the other grow facility in Dudley. What's the other facility?
Chase Ave? Yeah.
Chase Mill?
No.
Oh, the one that, on
The other
Corbin
farm.
Road?
Yeah.
Corbin Road, yeah.
Yeah, they have much higher levels than what this is. Because we actually put that well in, and also did all the work for the USDA in setting up all their irrigation system. So, yeah, we really don't see any, we don't really see any issues in what they're proposing here. We're also a certified operator, so we do operate public water systems throughout Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. So the well would conform with all of those regulations should they decide to be a public water supply. They can opt in to be a public water supply if they so choose, even if they're under the 25 people per day, but they don't have to. There will be no other requirements for the well, until you get to that 100,000 gallons per day, and their proposal is nowhere near that. So we don't see any other issues there. I mean, it is within a valley that's pretty well recharged, because obviously the river's right there. With the small amount of water that they're proposing to use, I don't see any issues.
And what is the proposed amount per day?
I think for what we're proposed right now, the original 50,000 is like 12,500 gallons a day.
12,500
Yeah.
gallons a
So
day.
I think it's 25 if we ever got permitted for the full build, it'd be 25,000 gallons.
We maintain several grow facilities around southern New England, a couple in Rhode Island, and another one here in Massachusetts, and that seems to be pretty consistent with what we've seen at other facilities.
So basically breaking that down, like gallons per minute, do you know how many gallons per minute you need to sustain?
I know if you look at I think it was on one of the slides, I believe, hold on. The water, bear with me here.
So there's
It's like-
1,440 minutes in a day?
Yeah.
You divide that
Yeah,
into
that's,
25,000, right?
12,000.
There's the water, yep. So I think the full, as you can see, the full build-out was proposed at 25,428, but we're realistically, right now, we're close to half of that.
Yeah, so if my numbers are correct, at 25,000 gallons per day, the day has 1,440 minutes, you're getting 17 gallons per minute.
Okay.
And the well test was done at 7 gallons a minute. So 1/3, 2.5 times less than full capacity, right? Roughly.
Now, will you have to, you said that the water that you tested was high in arsenic, so will you put a treatment system in for that water?
Yep.
And then, before you use it?
Correct.
Okay. The only other question that I had was pertaining to the road, the access road for this facility. It's currently being used for truck traffic. Will that truck traffic continue once this facility is operating?
Yes.
So the truck traffic will stay, but there'll be the additional traffic for the workers that go in and out of this facility?
Correct.
And there'll be a security gate before you get into the facility side, so that employee badges can be checked to make sure that only employees are getting in, or any delivery drivers.
Right.
Because any visitors that come in have to be signed in correctly, ID'd, they get a pass. So we have to have a point where that security post will be, to make sure that any vehicles that go by beyond that are stopped, even if they're employees.
Okay, so no straight trucks will be driving up to the facility?
No. So we have a security gate now at the entrance to the access road. And what will happen if this gets approved is there'll be a key that everyone can use, our employees at the quarry, and then the cultivation employees. And then there'll also be a secondary access gate, which is strictly cultivation employees, which will have a secondary badge.
Okay.
Question, Mr. Chairman, if I may. What sort of chemicals, fertilizers, for example, would be stored on site?
So anything that gets stored is ultimately stored inside those head houses. It's very organic-based fertilizer. It can't have any sort of real chemical nature into it under the CC regulations. So it's a very organic process that is maintained by the state, which is pretty unique to Massachusetts. A lot of other states allow you to add a lot to the product, but ultimately here in Mass, it's kind of just fertilizer. Cocoa-based is one of the ways they go with it, type of fertilizer.
Right. Right.
Yeah, it's
Worm
worm
casings,
It's
cocoa.
really organic-based in nature.
So there's no residue that is disposed of, it is entirely consumed in the process, and they...
There's waste that'll be collected once they're harvested, but that waste has to get removed from a state-certified company. So it'll be like a compactor on site that'll compress all the waste into pretty much drums, which they end up mixing the drums with compost and end up selling it to, like a Casella Organics or someone that makes a compost.
off-site.
Correct.
It is.
Yep,
It has to
yep.
get mixed
through a
in with
state-certified company.
Licensed facility and everything like that.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, length of training, how long does it take for you to train your employees?
Right, you can talk to
Right, can
that.
talk on that, yeah.
What's the length to train a cultivator or an employee on site?
Typically, 1 to 3 months will be your training phase, 90 days to get a grow tech trained for the facility. Many of the cultivators we're bringing on will already be multiple year veterans in the industry, so they're coming in with experience. But the techs, which are the ones we'll be hiring locally and kind of bringing in, typically takes 1 to 3 months to give them a base knowledge, and then they'll begin kind of work their way through the different progressions of our company.
Do they get some kind of a certification which would be advantageous to them in terms of a future career, if you will? It's something they could take with them, say, I have this certification, and somehow that advances them?
The industry does offer certifications, and we actually do have our cultivators and people run through different certification processes that allow for them to actually have that, but that is not industry standard by any means, it's just a company standard that we have.
So that would be something your company would be looking to
We
adopt,
already
right?
do it, we already currently do it.
What's the growth cycle? How long does it take from the first seed in the ground to the actual harvesting?
So you're looking at about 140 to 150 days from first plant in the ground to ultimately getting a harvest and having a dried product on the other side. So it's quite a long process.
Yeah.
Two crops per year, basically.
2 crops per a little bit.
So everything's gonna be kind of
Everything's
staged
cycled, so you
out.
try to get like 4,
Try to
but
get-
it's the way you cycle it.
Yeah. You try to get 4 full cycles
Right.
out of it within a typical
So you're always
year.
trimming and
How many pounds
removing.
is it measured in pounds? How many pounds of product do you
Pounds and
anticipate
grams.
harvesting per year?
So,
Go ahead.
Roughly 6 to 10,000
6 to 10,000
A year.
a year.
a year.
And it could be more, it could be less, depending on the strains you grow and the cycle and the success of the crop ultimately.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Questions?
Just want to point out once again that at full capacity, 25,000 gallons a day. The test was done over 3 days for 30,000 gallons. So basically, a little bit less than a third of full capacity is what they tested the wells for.
Yeah, we just tested the residential well that was there, it was more or less a test to see if there was a correlation between our well and the neighbor's well. It wasn't a true test of what we're looking
Right,
at.
and that's when the true test, when they're pumping out the 25,000 gallons, would be able to tell if it's got any effect on
Correct.
neighbors or not, so, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Just wanted to point that out.
Do you have any intention of adding another well to this facility?
I mean, we would end up drilling a well, we have it on the plan to feed that facility.
Okay. So
The
there would-
existing well that we tested is for the house,
For the
or
house, okay.
whatever, the existing building at 40 Fish Road.
So on startup, that well that you tested wouldn't be touched? for
Correct.
this?
Right.
Okay. So you'd be drilling?
It was more for just data purposes.
Yep, okay.
So is that the lot line there on the right? Is this all on lot 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, lot 2 technically, but yeah.
And the black line going around, is that like a roadway around the facility?
Gravel, yep. So
Gravel.
this is all paved, where the parking is, and then this is gravel. And
Yeah.
this is all designed for tractor trailer access, just to make sure we can get fire trucks around the building if need be.
Okay.
So it is ample in size.
Are you planning on doing anything to that gravel road, as far as any kind of, surface augmentation to it?
No.
All right, the reason why I bring it up is because we had a couple of residents that said that there's been a problem with gravel on Fish Road that is coming off the tires of the trucks. So
Okay.
they were wondering whether or not, like sticks in the tire treads. And then when the truck comes off the gravel road and it starts going down the paved road, they fly off. And apparently, from what we're being told, it's starting to collect on the road.
Okay.
So the thought was, if anything could be done to the last section of the gravel road so that that stuff starts flying off on your driveway before it.
We did end up, it was, I don't know, probably late, middle of fall, Dad, we installed a, go ahead.
Could we pave to the gate? Yes, we could. That road, when we took that over, that road was all dirt, all gravel. We put stone on it, put stone on it, put stone on it. We still do. Once that road becomes impregnated with that stone, there will be no dirt coming off. But if somebody wants us to pave to the gate, I got no problem with it, none whatsoever.
I'm just bringing up what it was mentioned.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I got no problem with that.
We have been trying to create a tracking pad for like a 70-foot stretch. It just takes a long time to pound the stone in, till
Okay.
eventually you have a solid stone base, because it's been gravel, dirt for so long.
Don't they also make something mechanically that you can put, like, you can dig a trench across the road and a metal plate or something you can put in there, so when the
can,
trucks
but it-
drive by, that it knocks the gravel out
It
of the
doesn't
tires?
work.
Yeah,
Oh, it doesn't work?
Doesn't work, no.
yeah. They're more of a maintenance nightmare than anything.
We tried it on multiple jobs, it doesn't work.
Okay.
But if you want us to pave it, we'll
We
pave
pave
it.
it, yeah. That's fine.
I did have one other question about the growing process and everything like that. I was wondering, what do you do with all of it? Because I know you don't use the entire plant, right? So what do you do with all that waste?
So it has to be, it's gonna get stored and then ultimately has to get ground up and composted with an organic mix. I can't remember the percentage, but there's a higher organic mix to it.
50%, okay.
And then that gets stored as waste, and then a licensed waste company has to come pick it up and dispose of it to a facility that the CCC has agreed for it to go to, and then they deal with it. From my understanding is that compost ends up really going to a lot of farms in Massachusetts, because it's unbelievable fertilizer to put back into the ground.
All right.
But it's fully regulated so we can't get rid of it ourselves. It has to get picked up by someone that's been licensed by the CCC to come and get it. They check it to make sure that it's got the proper percentages, and it's taken to a facility that has been licensed to take that into it.
Okay, so there's no chance that that's gonna be hanging around?
No.
once that gets-
No.
Can't.
Okay, all right.
No, because it's all about weights and measures, so the CCC knows exactly where things are going, how much we're getting rid of.
The state wants to know how much money they're getting paid, so every time you do a process in this, it gets weighed. So they
Anything
know
that-
how much money you're gonna pay them.
Anything that goes into waste has to be logged.
Right.
Under camera control, so they can see
They can
everything.
tell how much you're producing by how
Correct.
much waste you generate.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you would store, you said you store this temporarily, so it's like you store what, like one cycle would be stored, the waste would be stored for one cycle and then?
Most likely, as things are being harvested and dried, and then as we hit whatever the threshold limit is, at that point, we compost it, put it into the secured bin, and then work with the company to come pick it up and pick up the bin and take it away.
So you basically have a pickup after every cycle at some point?
Right.
Most likely, yes.
Public comments?
But by pickup, it's not like an 18-wheeler that comes and picks it up. This is all, probably like vans and kind of Sprinter van type materials. It's not a huge truck that comes and picks all this up.
Okay. Bill?
There's a discrepancy in the traffic study on the number of employees.
Okay.
2 or 3 places, you say there were 20, and then in a couple of other places, you say there are 30.
Okay.
So I'd like to, get some clarification, if you could take a look at the study and.
Sure.
Give us a consistent number. I don't think it affects traffic so much, but it might affect your parking requirements, and it might affect your DEP.
DP, yeah, correct, yeah, yep.
So if you're gonna start out with 30 employees, that would automatically kick.
Kickstart, 100%, yeah, we know that, yep,
If you're
right,
at
right,
20, then
right.
you can, postpone that.
Correct.
Until necessary.
Correct.
The DEP is aware of the project, so
Yes.
if we do go
We've
over
already
that
been in contact with
25,
them about the whole situation, so.
we'll go over it.
My other question was the phasing. You're suggesting a phase 2 at some point.
Possibly.
To to get to the maximum canopy space, you would be
For the
allowed
state.
at
You're right.
100,000?
Right.
So that drawing would be
A
if
full
it's
build-out.
completely built out with
Right.
phase one, phase two.
These 10, I think, right here.
So that's,
5, yeah, these 10 is technically phase 1. So from here down in the head house is phase 1. But this would be if we ever move
So
forward.
ultimately, you might get to 100,000 if you're allowed to by the cannabis control.
Correct.
so there's metrics that have to take place too. We can't just one day say, we're going to 100. You have to demonstrate that you've utilized at least 80% of your current license. And demonstrate that you have an ability to utilize the product that's going to be put up there. Even with this current license where we're at 50,000 square feet, if we don't utilize 80% of that square footage of that canopy space, they will automatically come after 2 years and downgrade that license on their own. So there are places in there to make sure that people aren't getting licenses higher than what they can actually grow. So you can't just jump from 6 to a tier 11 and say, listen, we have the capacity to do it. It's not allowed.
So we can only really approve what you're applying for now, which is the Tier 6
Correct.
license.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you
yeah.
want to come back for modification,
Yeah.
you could do that later.
Later, right, yeah, yeah,
Approving
yeah.
that.
We just wanted to show, that how it would ultimately lay out there, so that you
No,
can
it's good
see it all.
first.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because, I mean, there'd be nothing, we could grow tomatoes in the other 12 if we wanted to.
Sure.
Yeah,
right,
it's,
that's true.
Mr. Chairman, one more question if I may. With regards to the host agreement, should you increase production, and you go to the 100,000 square feet, for example, is the host agreement subject to review or at that point?
So I believe under the host agreement, it states that we can ultimately, I'd have to go review it because I haven't, that question's a good one. I can bring that back at the next meeting if there's no vote. But it would not be subject, I believe it says that it can start from a tier going up to a tier 11. I believe that's the way we worded it, because there'd be no change in the compensation to the town because it would be 3%.
no matter what, right.
So it's not a tier type of scale saying, for the first 100,000 that we earn, that they get, 2% and it go up. We offer the full 3%, that's allowed under state law.
There's also since you mentioned the host community agreement, that there's a $10,000 payment due the town when you get your provisional license.
So that first payment would be due, it's either this month or next month.
Okay, so you're aware of that?
Yes.
We are aware of
Yep.
it,
All right,
yep.
good, thank you.
And we've already talked to the town administrator, making sure that we can get that payment. And ultimately, I believe under the host agreement, that goes right into the general fund, but then it counts against our first full payment once we're up and operational.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, so we'll open it up for questions to the public. Anybody would like to come up and speak?
I'll just move.
Hi, I'm Mary Plain on 34 Fish Road. I just have a couple questions. One, I wanted to know the effects it was going to have on my well and all the wells, but especially with the arsenic that they were finding. I want to know how that's going to affect our wells. My second question is when we have a dry spout, is the same effects going to be that the town puts on the residents? Is that going to be put on them also if they're because I know we have our own well system, but it's the effects that, you can only use your water at a certain time. Is that going to be an effect on them also?
I think that's only for municipal water customers, isn't it?
Yeah, usually if there's a water ban in town, it's for people who have municipal water service, so that the town's wells don't go dry. If you have your own private well and you want to water your grass every day, you're allowed to do that.
Okay,
If your well goes dry, that's your problem.
all right. But what about the effects it has with the aquifer? How's it going to affect all the wells in the system? Are we on the same aquifer? Because what they sent us, it's very hard to understand it. So I wanted to know what the effect was going to be on my well, If I go to sell, if my well runs dry because they're pulling my aquifer, my well might be on the same aquifer system. I want to know how that's going to be effective and how that's going to affect us.
I think maybe we'll let the gentleman from the Weld Company talk to that.
Bill, are we gonna have anybody review these reports for this, from the town?
That's up to the board. If you'd like to have a peer review of the water study or the traffic study or the odor mitigation, you can
I would
make
say
that
of the wells,
request.
of the pumping, definitely.
Right.
If I could just clarify, this was really just strictly a pumping test to kind of take a look at what the impacts were from pumping on this site to the neighboring sites. This is not a pump test for the actual production well of the system, of the facility itself. So basically what we did was, all we were doing was making sure that we didn't see any impact from this facility to the neighboring property. We're only, all we can do is apply that to where the production well will be. So once the production well is put into place, once they get approval to do that, then we would go in, do that well, and then do another pump test. And during that additional pump test, we could monitor all of those wells at the same time and then give a full impact to make sure that there is no impact, that there's nothing touching any of those other wells, should you make that a condition of your approval. But the initial study was really just to kind of track if there was already an impact to the other wells, which we did not see. As far as the arsenic is something that's naturally present within the bedrock.
Right.
Moving that water, whether you're moving it at 5 gallons a minute or 15 gallons a minute, doesn't change the value of the arsenic level within the water. Pumping more doesn't increase the arsenic level. The arsenic level is naturally there by the, it's already present in the water, so moving more of it isn't gonna change that level. So what you're seeing in your arsenic levels in the wells currently over there is not going to change.
So the well for the grow facility has not been installed yet.
Correct.
Right.
But when it is installed, would it be safe to say that it's gonna be at a much lower elevation than what the houses that
Oh, yeah,
are
it's-
currently
it's
on
probably
Fish Road?
It's gonna be
30 feet lower, at least.
in a lot farther
A
away.
lot farther away, yeah, it's 600 feet away.
600 feet away and 20 to 30 feet lower than what the elevations are on Fish Road.
Right.
With the elevation, how does that affect with, we're higher and they're lower, how does that affect our well?
Well, because I would say because they're lower, I mean, I don't know if you're gonna go into the same aquifer or not, but just because they're naturally lower, their well could go deeper than the well that you're currently at.
Okay.
As I explained before, we're dealing with, all those wells up on Fish Road are all bedrock wells that are fractured rock where the water is coming into them. As we get down closer to the river, my guess would be is that water quality will probably get better down by the river, because you have a higher pressure pushing down on the top of the bedrock, and hopefully we'll get something that will be shallower. I mean, the shallower you go, the less impact you're gonna have with arsenic and other minerals that are naturally present in the water. So as we get farther away from all the houses on Fish Road, it's gonna be better for the developer and better for those people, because it's not gonna change anything that they have going up where they are now.
Okay, but you did say that we could put this as a condition that you check the wells once the grow facility well is.
Once it's installed, you can also, yes, we could definitely do a full-term pump test, which would be, typically within DEP guidelines. If it is a public supply well, it would be a 72-hour test, which was kind of what we replicated by just doing that quick pump test that we did there already. So yeah, you could also make it a condition that once the production well is installed, that we follow. And I would probably recommend to the proponent and a way to do it that way, so that you have that information should they become a DEP public water supply anyway. So we'd have the background information, but we'd follow those guidelines, and then that would require us to monitor any wells that are within 1,000 feet, and you could extend that out to all of Fish Road, because there's only, 5 or 6 houses there. So,
If I can just add that 25,000 number is if this was to be generated all the way up to 100,000 square feet.
Which is your plan, right?
Well, we'd have to come back to it.
But still, it's your plan.
But you're,
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so- yeah,
that's
yeah.
what we're talking about.
So if we stay at the
That's what we're talking
67,
about it.
We're about half that number.
but your approval is only half of that.
Right. So if I may, since you're an expert, and I'm nowhere near an expert, I have absolutely no idea about wells whatsoever. In my mind's eye, there's water every place underground, and it's all kind of connected more or less,
In one way or another, yes.
one way or another. So you said that on Fish Road, they have bedrock wells?
Yes.
And then here on this property, it would not be a bedrock, or?
No, it'd still be bedrock, but as you get closer to the river, we can probably get shallower and look for those upper fractures as opposed to on Fish Road where there aren't any upper fractures. As you get down closer to the valley, the upper fractures tend to form.
So you wouldn't be drilling as deep?
May not be.
May
We
not
don't
be.
know.
But in theory, if there is still some connection to the water table on Fish Road, in your experience, whenever you're draining off or pumping out a certain amount of water, to what extent does that, I guess what's the distance where it starts to affect, and at what point in time is your concerns basically none, because
That's why you
once
do a
you
pump
go-
test, because you can't document that. I mean, you can't do an analysis of that in bedrock. The problem with bedrock is it's fracture-based.
Okay.
Whereas if it was a gravel aquifer right along the river where we were using gravel, then we could model that ahead of time. In this particular case, we can't. So that's why I would probably condition the fact that we just monitor the wells that are currently on Fish Road, and then you know that there's no impact
And that's
on anybody there.
Chairman, I was just gonna add a quick anecdote. I have a private well myself, and the gentleman who drilled my well, he's long since retired, but he had been doing it a long, long time, and he had explained to me, and you can back me up on this if he's correct, but he said in his experience, there's no way of predicting. He said he drilled my well, he said, you could get 12 gallons per minute at 120 feet. He could literally go onto my neighbor's property right next door, and he might end up having to go 300 feet to get that kind of, it's all just a matter of literally what aquifer or what crack in the bedrock or whatever you're talking about under there that you have.
Yeah, in bedrock fractures, that's pretty typical. You'll see areas, it's typically not so much, lot to lot as it is area to area. And in this basin where this takes place, they're all pretty consistent. And if you talk to everybody on Fish Road, most of the wells are pretty similar.
So, just for the record, how many houses are there on Fish Road? There's a total of five, you said?
Five or six, I think, right?
5 or
Mary?
6?
How many are there?
I gotta count now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait a minute. 6. Am I right? 6? How many houses on,
6?
6, yeah, it's Paul's. And what about the girls at the end? They're more on West Dudley. So 6 houses.
Okay. So then if you did this pump test after the grow facility well was done, and we made that a condition, you would just monitor those 6 houses?
With the homeowner's approval, we would put a transducer in each one of those wells and monitor the water levels in those and make sure that there's no impact. So basically, we would put in a transducer and we have these submersible transducers, we put in a well, it'll monitor the water level within 1/100th of a foot or 1,000th of a foot, depending on what you want. And do some background, so we'd leave it there for several days so that we could see the typical application of what happens when the people are using the water in the normal application. So we get that antecedent information prior to doing the pump test, run the long-term pump test that would be typical of DEP requirements, and then also monitor those wells during that, and then monitor it for the full recovery period of that pumping well. And that would basically ensure the fact that you wouldn't see any impact.
But if there was an impact? If there is an impact, what can be done?
Well, then you start looking at other options. Maybe it's drilling a second well, maybe it's slowing down the pump, maybe we don't need to pump it at whatever level we did that pump test at, so that we would see, minimized impact. And is it an impact that would be detrimental to the people that are there? I mean, and when I'm talking about an impact, I'm talking about an impact of several inches, which really wouldn't have an impact on the homeowner, but we would know that there is some connection to those. We'd be looking for something, if the well started drawing down equally or in a similar pattern to what we're pumping, then we'd know that we have an issue with that particular well. But This is not a big user. If this was a, if this was again, if this was a factory that had 50 people, water wouldn't be an issue, and we'd probably be using just as much water as what they're proposing to use in their phase 1 development.
Yeah, if I can, just.
Which is what you're approving. You're not approving the whole thing.
More of a relation to what we're pumping here is, and we definitely want to do the pump test, it's nothing against that. Let's take example like a Perryville Estates. That's 40 houses that use 400 gallons a minute a house. That's 16,000 gallons of water a day that's coming out of that subdivision.
400 gallons a minute?
400 gallons a day
A day.
per house, times 40 houses is 16,000 gallons a day. We're participating 12.5 for this first phase. Does the planning board put a restriction on Perryville Estates because they can't prove the pumping? They don't let the guy build his houses? You know what I mean? You're kind of doing the same pumping, and you're on the same aquifer. You got 40 houses in a condensed area, right? I mean, it's,
How many gallons per house?
average person is 100 gallons a day, so let's say there's 4 people per house. They're all big houses in Perryville Estates. So let's say 400 gallons conservatively a day times 40 houses is 16,000 gallons.
Geez, I've got a water meter, I gotta start looking at my meter. That sounds like an incredible amount of water, 400 gallons per day for a 4-person house?
That's what they average. That they say is 100 gallons a day per person, per
By,
house.
by state statute,
What?
I think it's a household that uses that much, but I could be wrong.
DEP uses 110 gallons per day.
Per
of
person.
Septic sewage discharge
Yeah.
per bedroom.
per bedroom.
So I'm just trying to show it's, you're still drafting those 40 houses out of the same condensed
We're also
aquifer,
gonna have buffer tanks on the property.
to hold water,
to
right?
hold
Holding
water,
tanks,
So
yeah.
they're, that's a backup reservoir of water for us. So at some point, there was some sort of issue with the butters. We can draw from those buffer tanks until that, situation got rectified. So these tanks will be there to hold water, ultimately pumping into them too, so we have that backup source. But if there's ever something that brought up, we can start drawing from those buffer tanks and allow us time to deal with the aquifer issue and the pump issues so that facility.
Oh, yeah, that's in the
can
cul-de-sac,
also
yeah.
work with the neighbors.
So if you also had that storage capability, like if there was an issue with the abutters, you could draw your water at night when they're not using the water and store it for the day and run off those tanks during the day and run the pumps
Sure.
at night?
There's options, yeah,
There's a
100%,
possibility of
yeah.
doing that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going home and telling my wife, we're changing bath days every other Saturday instead of,
Yep.
It's good to know that every night they do recharge the tanks that we have on site. So it is pumping at night, typically, and they use what was filled into the tanks during the day.
Okay.
So that is actually what.
Okay.
So my other question for you was, I know you're doing this, you're doing this in phases, so at your first phase, you're not expecting to have more than 25 employees because that would
Correct.
trigger your DEP.
And that's all we think we need for now to get it
Right,
going,
but
right?
if you do get to full capacity, you do get to the full site, will you have in excess of 25 employees to run that facility?
I mean, it's be probably closer to 50, 40 to 50.
Okay, so then you will automatically.
Would have to, we trigger it,
You'll
correct,
be under the
right,
DEP
correct.
public water supply.
Right.
Okay.
Now, my other question is, the key status to get into the gate, is that gonna be like one of these electric keys, or is it,
It's electric key, yeah.
because I
And
was
that's
just
provided by
concerned.
Citronics through CCC, right?
The security company would program all those
Right.
access points. So
They look like a
that there's
badge, kind of,
log.
with a key on it.
And then once again, all of our employees have photo IDs on them to make sure that they're doing it. They have to have those on at all times. Once, one of the good things that we were proposing was actually keeping those IDs, because if someone shows up for work and doesn't have their ID, we can't let them go into the job site. So they actually would be signing in every morning to take out their ID, and then at night they would give them back their ID. So we'd also be able to control and make sure that we know who's on the property.
At
So
all
there's
times,
further-
right.
There's further security that way.
So is there gonna be somebody at that gate?
Yes, there's a security guard shack at the gate, right?
Okay. All right, that's it for me, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else from the public have any questions?
If I may, thinking historically, you plan for the worst, hope for the best, and I'm looking at that proposal in this way. You hope everything goes well, but when it's your home, your property, you want to make sure everything that can be covered is covered. The traffic study. I find it very lacking. The homeowners there can tell you, you have a school bus that drops off and picks up kids twice every school day. You have the largest, I'm assuming the largest dump trucks allowed on public roads coming in there starting before 7 o'clock and going, weather permitting. If it's bad weather, then they don't run, but 6 days a week, these heavy dump trucks coming in and out of that road. You have, everything from Amazon to FedEx to UPS coming down there. You have, in the wintertime, you got plow trucks, sanders. As the gentleman said, they put down gravel. They bring in a huge grader, industrial grader, to smooth out the road. There's a lot more than, as the study said, at peak times, 8 to 10 vehicles going to the facility. Mention spring, summer, fall. I wouldn't let my kids do it, but there's mini bikes, dirt bikes, ATVs. I know the landowners have tried to cut off the paths that are in the road, going to the gravel road, and from Intervale all the way over, you come by and you get a lot of these young people that are riding these recreational vehicles up and down Fish Road, coming through the paths. It's not just 8 to 10 vehicles coming from the facility. You've got a lot of traffic at different times, and especially in the wintertime, you can have problems. Let's see if I'm forgetting any other vehicles that would be on there. What did I leave out? Delivery trucks, obviously, the facility is going to have a lot of delivery trucks and pickup trucks. The road's going to be busy from the sound of it. It's not going to be 8 to 10 vehicles at peak times of the day. And you have people walking their dogs. They may stop if there's a lot more traffic. They go walking down there. And it's not just from Fish Road. I mean, they come over from Intervale, from West Dudley, because normally, in the 21 years I've been there, I don't think there's been an accident on Fish Road. It's a nice, quiet road, usually, now that you have the dump trucks, but people do walk it and do appreciate it. That's why I'd like you to understand that it's not, as the report said, just 8 to 10 new vehicles coming at peak time. And if, as they say, they expand it to 25 to 50 workers, I'm assuming most of those people are going to have their individual SUVs and pickups and everything else. So, and because it's a dead end, if there, heaven forbid, there is an accident, that road's going to be closed for a while. People will not be able to get out that lives up the street, and people won't be able to get in until the accident is cleared, things are taken care of. I don't know if they're planning on expanding the entrance, since the big dump trucks are still going to be running. Even now with those if they meet, and I mentioned this last time, I found tracks across the bottom of my driveway where they come across because they have to swing out and come around if another one's coming in, or they have to stop. And I know the study says it's 16 feet wide, but you get one of those dump trucks and you got an SUV or a pickup, somebody pulls over. And again, especially in the winter, we get supposedly a storm coming Saturday.
We are widening the road from, like we said earlier, from West Dudley Road to our access road. That's part of the sidewalk. It's actually technically a widening of Fish Road.
The entrance, you mean?
Yes.
The entrance going down will be
To our private
wide.
way, yeah. So from
Okay.
our private way down to West Dudley Road, we're widening.
And can I ask you, what signage are you going to do? Other than speaking about a stop sign, will there be,
There'll be a big sign at the end that says entrance for Ramco's Pit and entrance for Fish Road Cultivation. There'll be a big sign up there
Okay,
for
thank
everyone
you.
to see. Yep.
Because, again, it's past my driveway, but
Yep.
the other homeowners, if all of a sudden people miss that turnoff, and they go up that dead end, it's gonna, it could be a problem. Okay, next. It talks about in your definitive plan, the state requires insurance. They recommend $1 to $2 million. But here to the chairman, in two different places, the comment was they're planning to get insurance. Yet, if I'm not mistaken,
We have to have insurance.
you have to have it
I already have a
before.
$5 million policy on the property right now, so.
But is that $5 million for the property itself?
Aggregate for everything.
Or that's anything that may affect the abutters or the people on
I
Fish
have to
Road?
get the details on it, I'll be honest with you, but
Okay, because in today's market,
we have to have insurance on the building. I'm not gonna have an uninsured building.
Okay, $1 to $2 million, if something goes wrong, in terms of water or anything else, heaven forbid, but if something does go wrong, 1 to 2 million may not cover anything, but the state requires that to be in place, from what I've read, in your definitive plan before it's approved. Might as well get to the water issue. In terms of the arsenic, Mike, I was like taken aback when I saw the level. And when I moved in and they did my water test, they told me the water was excellent. I had excellent water coming out of that well. But I also looked up, EPA says 0.01, and the state goes by that, I believe, okay? And yet the figure that came out from the water company was 0.044. That's 4 times above the EPA suggested limit.
But we're not drinking it, this is for the plants.
I understand, but if that starts getting, because you have a septic system, right?
The septic system is only for sanitary sewer. All waste for these plants goes into a tight tank, which gets pumped bi-weekly.
So are you guaranteeing that all the water pumped out of the ground, the arsenic will be removed from it?
You guaranteeing everything you throw in your septic system?
I know, you're putting effluent into your septic system, so you got gray water getting recharged into your backyard anyway, so I understand what you're saying, but it's kind of a moot point.
Well, it's not a moot point when you have a large industrial
So
facility.
what water that's going to the plants is gonna get filtered first, which should probably get it below the 0.01 or whatever, and whatever wastewater comes after that goes into the tight tank. But we don't have to filter the water to feed the plants, we're doing it because it's better for the plants.
I'm just curious, Mr. Chairman, when was your private well tested?
Well, 21 years ago.
I bet you they didn't even check for arsenic.
Arsenic, probably not, it's only been happening in the last 10 years.
I would suggest all of you have your wells checked for arsenic.
I had arsenic, and I have a filter.
There's a large arsenic belt that runs from like the west coast of Maine through New Hampshire, through Massachusetts, the central Mass, through Fitchburg, Worcester, Dudley, through the middle of Connecticut.
I know, because a number of years ago, you probably saw in the paper, Charlton had a big deposit of arsenic, and those homeowners had a big problem, or still do. And that was my concern is how much, if you're pumping even 12,000 or 25,000, how much of that arsenic in that water is going to end up?
Nothing's going back into it recharged.
I guess,
The only
Mr.
stuff that's
Chairman,
getting,
the
yeah.
point I was trying to make is that right now, in reality, you probably all are pumping arsenic into your septic systems right now.
Right.
Into your leaching fields. You're probably putting more arsenic in the ground right now.
And we're gonna.
Than what they're gonna do, because they're gonna put it into a tight tank and then have to truck it
And it's gonna be
off.
filtered first.
Yeah.
And it will be trucked out, is
Yes.
guaranteed?
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It only holds so much, so I gotta get rid of it before.
Just like they can't keep the dead plants there.
Right.
That all has to eventually
Right.
come out too.
Cultivate in Uxbridge has the same system. They don't have municipal sewer, so they have a 10,000 gallon tight tank that's pumped every 2 weeks.
If I might, arsenic at .04 is not really a very high level. The recommended, the detection.
Potable drinking water is 0.1 or whatever.
Yeah, just for an example, the technical school in Charlton, Bay Path, ran off wells for up until this past year, and their arsenic level coming out of the well was about 0.8. So it was 80 times the level, and we filtered that water for all that time. until they switched over to city water recently, and now we operate the booster station for the city water there. So, I mean, there are levels that are really, really high. If I lived on Fish Road and I found, if I hadn't tested my water in 21 years, I would probably recommend that you test it. And when you do test for arsenic, you should also test for radon, because they typically run together. So if it's been 20 years since you've tested, I would recommend that you do it. And one of the things that you notice, the other well that we tested, Mr. St. John's well, the level was much lower, and we didn't see any connection between the two. So they're really not very far away, so that the arsenic can vary that much, you know, in a very short range. So each individual well should be tested if you do have that concern. So I would just giving you a heads up, but when you do test for arsenic, also test for radon.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the gentleman a question? Sir, are you saying that Bay Path's drinking water was .08 arsenic?
Yeah, but it was filtered before it was delivered.
.08 or .8?
0.8, I believe, at one point. One of the wells was shut down. They, like I said, we filtered the water there to remove the arsenic for the last, I think it was 8 years, once they found they had arsenic in the wells. It was there before that, and nobody ever knew it because it wasn't a required test.
Right.
And once it was required and they found arsenic in the wells, we installed filtration to remove the arsenic. Arsenic filters are not allowed to be backwashed either. So when you put in an arsenic filter, it's a one-time use and it has to be removed. You can't backwash that water back into the ground by code.
Right.
So when you filter arsenic, it goes through a media bed, the arsenic gets removed. When the media bed expires, you take it out and you send it out to have it regenerated off-site.
Okay. I just want to know.
I might be wrong with the exact amount at Bay Path, but it was very, very high. It was much higher than the well that we saw here. I know that, but like I said, they had arsenic filters in there for the last 8 years, right up until they just tied into city water based on their,
Right.
it wasn't because of arsenic, it was because of the VOC contamination from the gas station years ago that they finally tied into the city water.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Let's see. I think that's about it that I had. I think everything else has been answered or addressed. Other than I would say that, you know, the big issue that's on everybody's mind then is the water, and whether it's arsenic or the drop of the wells. But I will take the gentleman's advice, and this spring I'll get the water tested. I thank you for your time. Any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak? So I guess it's, what's the board's pleasure? The town planner mentioned earlier that, you know, we do have the right to have the traffic study review and if we wanted to have something put in place for the wells. And what was the third thing you said?
Odor mitigation?
Odor mitigation. I mean, does the board think that's necessary, or are they ready to make a decision, or would they like more information?
Well, we haven't had Jeff Walsh do his peer review yet.
So we're waiting on that.
We need to at least have that.
Of his peer review.
And if you want to have some other peer reviews done, you know, that would, you know, take some
Coincide.
time as well, but.
What we would need, Mr. Chairman, in my opinion, is a review of the new well that's gonna be dug to supply, because wherever that location of that well is,
Well, I think that could be
in
done.
other words, this.
We won't do
test
that
that's in
until
here-
after it's passed, you know what I mean? But we
It could
will
always
definitely
be-
have no problem supplying the information and
It could always
obviously.
be a condition.
Correct, it can be addition on the boat.
What's the board's take on the traffic study?
I can say, one of the days the traffic study was done was the busiest day that we had at the pit for the year, whether it's relevant or not, but
I mean, it's
one of the busiest days.
It's a well-known company, it's the same
If I
company.
may, with Mr. Chairman, as far as the traffic study is concerned, it's my understanding this is gonna be a multi-shift location. So
It is,
if
and
you
we're-
have 20 employees, likelihood is that you're not gonna have all 20 on site at that
Same time,
one
right,
point in
right.
time. So that traffic.
May have some
is
7 to
gonna be
3, have a
somewhat-
5 or 6 roll in, then, 8 to 4, some people, you know what I mean?
Stagger the shifts
Right.
to
We
some
can
extent.
definitely stagger the shifts.
Okay. So then-
And we can make sure that
I
any
think
pickups.
It's more likely that you're gonna see delivery and, delivery trucks, if you will, as mentioned, the UPS, the FedEx, those kinds of characters coming on a more regular basis.
Right.
More traffic than your employees, that and the fact that you're moving product off-site. Those two combined would probably be more traffic
Right.
than your employees.
So really, anything that's coming in to pick up or drop off of materials would
Right.
not be bigger than a UPS truck.
Okay.
It's
But
not 18-wheelers, it's
it will
not gonna be
be-
the size of the
You're
Ramco
gonna have
trucks.
WB Mason, somebody's gonna be bringing in office.
Things like
supplies,
that.
Yeah, exactly.
kind of
Yeah,
stuff is
right,
just
right.
going to happen.
But we can also, those companies work to 9 to 5. They're not coming at nighttime, they're not gonna come early when the kids are getting picked up, and we can make sure that deliveries with the
Proverbial
state.
lunch coaches coming in there for a little lunch break or something
Right.
for the employees or something.
And anytime the state, if the state's saying that we have to have a pickup or something, we get to schedule that with the CCC and the police, and we can make sure that it's, kind of in an off-hour type, so that it's not during any of those pickups or any time with the neighbors be utilizing that, so we can make sure it's kind of in the middle of the day. And we stagger those too, because they can't be at the same time, so that, the CCC makes sure that those are done, the police know about those, the CCC knows so that they can, follow those trucks. And all that's under GPS.
All right, if you're bringing the police on site, then obviously that's good to add an added safety factor, I assume.
So they won't be on site. What I'm saying is anytime we have a delivery.
They're notified.
Or pickup of any sort of marijuana product, they have to be made aware of that, of the time it's coming in and the time it's leaving.
All right.
And similarly, the CCC is aware of that, so that the CCC, any of those vehicles have to be under GPS and two-man control, so they can follow that vehicle and make sure that it's not deviating or stopping anywhere it's not supposed to. The whole route is already planned out with the police
And they stagger
and the
everything.
CCC, and they can't happen at the same time. So we can stagger them, we can tell when to come pick them up, so that it's not happening anywhere close to when people would be coming or going to work.
I think the thing that was maybe more concerning was the ATVs and the kids on the dirt bikes and whatever else is going on there that probably shouldn't be. But I guess according to the neighbors, there's a fact of life, is I don't know if there's anything.
Everyone's got access to the rail trail, and that's where most of them get on and get off, so. It abuts, the rail trail is right here.
The good thing is
Short
now,
of some police enforcement, there probably isn't much that can be done about that, I assume.
Right.
and there'll be security now on site, so maybe that will
Deter 'em.
deter some of that.
Cameras, right, thank you.
Yeah, this entire facility will be under surveillance 24 hours a day.
So it'll
From
be
the CCC and the
yeah.
police department.
And there'll be a fence around it, because it has to make sure that no one can have access to it. So there'll be security
6
people
foot high with
walking
3 rows
around.
of barbed wire on top.
Yeah,
Privacy fence, it has the privacy slats in it, chain link.
and security 24 hours a day.
I think to Mr. Wetruba's point, I think that for the neighbors, I think the feeling might be that, I don't presume to speak for them, but my sense of it is that they would like to see something done in terms of that check, if you will, on their wells currently with the
Yeah.
pumping of the new well and whatever the analysis might result with from that.
So we can definitely make that a condition of the approval. And have the well pump test, the monitoring done after the.
Right. It does us no good to have a pump that over pumps, because the plants want water 24/7, so we have to make sure we have a good well.
Right.
If not, we gotta buy water.
Right. Okay. And, this was mentioned, the insurance, you'll be able to, could you get us like an insurance binder or something?
So the 1 to 2 million is for Fish Road LLC, which is the business, which is different than the property owner, for
yeah,
example.
okay, yeah.
So the CCC maintains that 1.2 for not only incidents that occur to, let's say, employees or visitors on site, but also we have to have a bond in place with the state in case, let's just say, John says, screw this, I'm just walking away from this facility, I'm leaving all these plants there. There's a bond in place with the state so they can actually take this money, go in and take all those plants out without any cost to anybody else, make sure it's done in a proper way. But the $1 to $2 million is for the cannabis operation itself, it's not for the property owner. So That would be through DJT, and that's completely separate,
Yeah.
so.
And we already have insurance on the
So
property.
you could get us
Yeah.
a binder on both of them.
Sure.
100% tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, so let's just get back to the traffic study quickly. Do we think we need to have it peer reviewed, or is the board accepting what was submitted?
And just to add, I mean, this is a little bit different than kind of like the retail that we had brought before. I mean, this isn't a destination spot, so
Right.
besides the deliveries and those employees, we don't want anyone else going there. And I don't think anyone else wants anyone else going there, so.
And they were a state certified, company that do it. They do multiple facilities.
Just an informal poll of the board. I'm okay with the traffic study that was submitted.
Yeah, I'm all right with that.
As well.
Okay, all right, so we're all set with that. We're definitely doing the well pump and the testing. The insurance binders are gonna come in.
Mr. Chairman, can we get back to the well test thing?
Sure.
When you look at the traffic report, they give a conclusion, kind of a face-it type thing. The pump report really just kind of just real quick, and you got all that data in the end. Not being an expert in the field whatsoever, does it make sense to try to get somebody just to look at it, just a quick interpretation? Or face it, or is it not worth
Yes, I
it?
think it could make sense to do that, just to provide some assurance to the neighborhood that their wells won't.
Just seems like it would be part of due diligence, I mean.
And we'll,
I think that should be part of the conditioned approval for the new well, not
New well, not
the
this
data that we
existing well,
submitted,
right.
because that data is really not pertinent to
Right.
what the actual
the
production
data we
will
submitted was
be.
just to show a correlation with that the closest well to the neighbor, that there was no correlation.
That's
in what the possible pumpage could be.
That
It was-
well
it
that's on
wasn't
the
for-
property is not gonna be utilized for this operation.
Correct.
Right, you guys said that 85 times, I got it?
Oh,
Right,
sorry.
But so, I don't understand 100% everything that's being presented, so I was wondering if it makes sense for us, the planning board, is to have someone to kind of go through and give us a summary, interpret it in English, so just a quick summary, face it, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, if that would give you more comfort, then sure, you can do that.
So then we're gonna want peer reviews on both of these wells. Because
I just, not the wells, just the report that we have. I'm not a well expert, I don't, not 100% know exactly what's in the report.
I know, Dan, but what I'm saying is that if we get a peer review of this report on this well that's not gonna be used, I'm gonna want one on the report on the
Right.
well that is gonna be
I
done.
was gonna say, can we make it a condition on the vote that we do that for the well that we are gonna use? Because this one's kind of irrelevant, I'll be honest. It's,
And it shouldn't have been submitted. It's irrelevant. It is submitted.
It was to give the
yeah.
homeowners some peace of mind before they started. That's why they included one of the homeowners'
I'm only one
wells.
vote.
I have no problem,
Okay.
no, I have no problem.
I have
with
only
that.
one vote. I see a
I just
bunch
wanna
of
make sure
numbers
that-
that I don't understand 100%, and I'm just saying it would be, for me, it would be a good idea if I would have that interpreted by someone who give you a quick summary, paragraph, 3 sentences, what happens to be. All right, if that's
I
my
don't-
vote, if the 4 are against me, I'm fine with it. That's all I'm
I don't have a
saying.
problem with that, what Dan's asking for, I just wanna make sure that we also
Have
can
some-
get
The new well.
Yes.
Tested
Yeah,
it,
okay, yeah.
tested it
You want
on.
to go to Board of Health anyways.
Right.
yeah, it's gonna go to DEP, Board of Health, when we file it anyway for the new well, so I mean, it's fine.
Well,
Tom, to your point, the Board of Health is gonna look at like arsenic levels and stuff like that.
But they'll look at
Stuff
pumping
as
rate,
well,
too.
but I'm also more concerned about
yeah.
gallons per minute.
100%.
Yeah.
So,
What was the other thing you mentioned, Bill? There was 3 things.
Well, we didn't really talk about odor. I don't, they mentioned their
He
Supplied
plan.
quite a bit of odor mitigation,
He's
yeah.
got 3 systems that he
Right.
mentioned that
Right.
he's doing the HVAC system, so no free air coming in from outside.
Charcoal
Carbon
filtration.
filters, and then the misting.
Right.
Um,
I mean, I think for the Chase Mill, we had conditions, if there was odor, detected, then there would be certain actions that would be taken.
we had a lot more houses in a close proximity. to
So
the
we
Chase
could have a similar condition of approval that,
The nature of that facility, though, Bob, is different in that it's a processing facility in addition to a grow facility and a retail facility. I mean, there's a lot more going on, it would seem, there than there is in this situation.
But
but
growing
the
is what
odor is
generates
primarily
the odor.
an
This
issue
is
with
growing on the
cultivation.
processing.
No, it's the growing. And actually, I think isn't it that it's a certain time during the growing cycle that's when the plants tend to give off the most?
But the system we're proposing down here, because we have the ability, because of the uniqueness of the greenhouses, is actually a stronger system that's going in Chase Ave, because we can't use the misting system down there
And it is
based
a more
upon the
rural setting.
It is.
But we can look at the same conditions that we had for Chase Ave and see if it's worth putting in it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, I
We
spoke to
expect
John,
that
we
we kind of
expected that to be
expected
in
something,
there,
right.
and that any costs associated with odor mitigation in futures on the applicant.
Right.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we're set on the traffic study. We need more work on the current well report. We'd like to have that reviewed, and then we would have to do something for the future well and well testing after that, and monitoring of the 6 homes that are in the immediate area.
Mm.
And then we'll look at the previous odor conditions
Right.
that were used at Chase Ave, and we'll put them on, we'll pretty much hold you to the same thing.
100%.
Okay. All right, so we do need our feedback from our consultant town engineer. So what would you say, Bill? We should put this on for the next meeting?
I think we should try for
Yeah.
the next meeting. If
That'd be great if we
We
could.
can get Graves to get the report in.
Mhm.
So the next meeting would be February 9th. We already had one scheduled for 7:15, so how about if we make this one at 8 o'clock?
Are we at 7:15?
Yeah.
We should be quick for the
I was
subdivision.
gonna say, we probably don't need 45.
7:20?
So you wanna go
7:30 probably.
7:30?
7:30? Okay.
Which day was that? The 9th?
The 9th at 7:30?
And then you'll get.
Getting good
both-
at these, Bill.
We should be able to get both of them wrapped up in the same day.
Okay.
It's quite
Appreciate it.
possible. I don't know about the well report, how long that will take. But I'll try to work on it quickly and see if I can get somebody to take a look at it.
Just to clarify, you just want that data pretty much put in a layman's terms, correct? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a whole new study, it's
Yeah.
just
No, no, no,
someone
no, no.
interpreting that report for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
An executive
I think the
summary.
data-
Right.
Yeah, so it might be a little bit easier than.
Yeah, right, yeah.
An executive summary is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, 3-4 sentences, paragraph.
Is that something you need to take care of, or do we have to have someone take care of it? I mean,
I'll find somebody.
okay, that's what I kind of figured. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that's,
You'll just be paying for it.
story of my life.
It'll be done in the style of peer review, it just won't be a.
Yeah.
Right, it won't be a complex report. Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
So-
All right, so based on that, I think we have a hard stop at 10 o'clock, so.
Well, we did invite the neighborhood in to talk about the zoning change. And,
Okay.
we should try to do some of that if we can.
Try to do it quickly.
Thank you very much, appreciate it, gentlemen.
Okay. Oh, good.
I got to get it before. I plan on leaving at 10 o'clock.
Okay, that's no problem. If you have to leave, that's fine. All right, so, yeah, we did ask if any of the residents of Fish Road wanted to come in and talk about the zoning change, so if we can take care of that quickly now, that would be great. The zoning change for Fish Road,
Hi, Elin, I of 36 Fish Road.
yep,
We are proposing that for the town meeting in May is the next town meeting and vote,
yep,
that all of Fish Road, with the exception of 40 Fish Road, get rezoned to residential. This would cause, residential 87, the subdivision directly to our east has that. Rezoning would allow us to protect the integrity of our neighborhood for future, as well as match the current and only use of the developed lands on Fish Road. Residential developments are not allowed in 130, so by rezoning, it allows the Goulasses to not have to jump through hoops to build the house they want to build on their land that they already own. And otherwise, if all the exceptions are made for them, then we're violating our own bylaws. And what are the point of our bylaws if we are constantly giving variances for everything? So basically, we want our road to be residential.
Do you know if yourself and all your current neighbors that are on that road have a 2-acre lot or larger?
Mr. Chairman, I looked at that today.
Okay,
So there's one lot that has an existing single-family home is greater than 2 acres.
okay,
The other 4 lots, 2 of the lots have more than 2 acres, and then 3 do not. There are 2 town-owned parcels there, which one exceeds 2 acres and the other one is less. And there's a vacant lot that you may recall the owner applied for a variance for that is under 2 acres.
Okay.
So if you rezone it to 2-acre minimums.
They're still, they
he
still
would
need
not-
variances.
He would still need a variance.
So that's what we wanna make sure. If we're gonna rezone it, we don't wanna put it, we don't want put you back in a disadvantage. If you don't, we need to find out what's the smallest lot that a single-family house exists on today, and try to put you into that zone.
So we could do res 43.
43?
would- they would
Whatever
allow-
number, we just want to be residential.
Okay, yeah, so that's what we would recommend for your road
Okay.
then. So if you have, if all the houses were over 80, all the house lots, if all the lots that houses are currently built on were over 87,000 square feet, then we could go with the res 87. But if you have one that's less, that person is still gonna need a variance every time he wants to do something, because he's gonna have a non-conforming lot.
Whichever number goes on the end of the residential, we're good with that.
Okay. Okay, so we could look at that, and if Bill's saying that 43 would work, we could change it to 43. And that would.
So there are two ways to proceed. The planning board could sponsor the article.
Yep.
Or the neighborhood would have to get signatures of 10 residents to put it on for an annual town meeting.
Are the house lots contiguous? They're on both sides of the street, but are they contiguous?
Well, there's the vacant lot, which is in the middle, and then there's 2 town-owned lots at the
Okay,
end.
so we could basically make it contiguous, right?
I think we would, as was suggested, rezone the whole street,
Right, both sides.
both sides. yeah.
Okay, we could do that.
And leave their project, well, they're no longer there, but leave their project alone. Leave
The lot
40
at the end of
fish
the-
as
The lot at the
is.
end of the cul-de-sac would
Right.
remain in industrial, yep. That's fine.
The other issue is that district is an adult entertainment overlay district, which I don't think we should touch, because the town has to have
Someplace.
someplace where
That's the
that
only
use
one
would be
we've got.
permitted, and that's the only one in town.
Now I know what's going in that barn.
No more curb cuts.
So it would look kind of odd that you have a residential district for an adult entertainment area, but unless you wanted to look for some other district,
We could-
which would be very difficult, I
Well,
think, but.
we could move the adult entertainment to another portion of the industrial 130 area.
That sounds fantastic. Does it have to be a specific size?
Can we keep the adult entertainment to just industrial 130?
Maybe.
Because I think that's I think that's the way it's proposed right now. I think it says that adult entertainment is in the industrial 130.
Well-
They're in the industrial 130, so
But
if
it's
we
only
take them.
specific to this industrial 130.
Right, but if we're taking them out of the 130, they'll no longer be part of the adult entertainment district.
Well, no, it's on the map. It's mapped as adult entertainment on this
But
location.
only because it's industrial 130.
Does the
So
town care
you'd
about
have
those
to-
lots,
You'd have to
though?
amend the district, though, because it's already been approved to cover this extent.
But the
If you're
lots-
changing the extent of the district, you have to get approval at town meeting.
Town-owned properties at the end there, right? So what if you left the town-owned lots out of the zoning change and just,
It's easier if you do when you're doing a zoning change, if you do the lots contiguous, you don't wanna have 3 lots, res 43, 1 lot,
spot
industrial 130, yeah.
it would be contiguous because the town-owned property is the
Mhm.
last lot on Fish Road before the,
Marijuana facility?
Mhm.
I thought there was 2 lots there.
There are, but they're continuous. They're back to back, and then it's the Goulas, and then the Tenally's.
Okay, so we would just do the privately owned lots to residential 43, leave the town property and the marijuana facility at 130.
I think you need to amend the adult entertainment district.
I think that, yeah, I think we can do that.
So that would be a separate article, because it's a different issue.
And state that it's just gonna be for the 130 industrial zone,
Yes.
and that these houses that are, these private properties that are being rezoned to res 43 no longer include the adult entertainment district.
Well, these.
That go
are-
without saying?
These are single-family homes, so they're really not suitable for adult entertainment uses. So you may not really need to rezone it at all,
Okay?
but that's up to you if you.
once we change it to Res 43, then you go by that use table and adult is out on that.
No.
It's an overlay.
No.
No? Oh,
You
'cause
have an
it's
adult
overlay.
entertainment
Oh,
district,
yeah.
which is an overlay on existing property.
So we just changed the overlay district.
So you would have to change the overlay district at town
We can do
meeting.
that.
change of
It
most.
shouldn't be too hard, we're gonna have all the meets and bounds for each lot, we just say we're removing that from the overlay district.
Right, we could work on that if that was your preference.
That would make sense, right?
Yeah, get that adult entertainment out of there, yep.
You know, there's,
To 43.
obviously, there's a constitutional issue involved. The Supreme Court has said adult entertainment is free speech. So you have to have some location in town where you would permit this use.
Damn straight.
So if we're gonna shrink the district, it needs to stand the test of, someone could actually go in and do that kind of a use in that district.
Does it have to be of a certain size, in terms of that overlay?
Well, that's a good question. You know, it's gotta be a usable piece of property.
There's a whole cannabis cultivation farm going right at the end.
So
That's adult entertainment of another sort, I think.
So I think we need some town
Hopefully
council
adults.
Yeah.
input into this to make sure we don't run afoul of the law.
Right, because we're also gonna be changing some of, I don't know if that area on 131, where the gentleman came to us with a issue of his property not being in the industrial, or being in the industrial zone where he had a business, and we were looking at trying to make that into like a business zone for him, if that's gonna take more away of this 130 zone, I don't know, it's all very close together.
I think we need the town planner to delve into this just a
Yeah.
bit more before we go further with it at this point.
But that would be our proposal for you, to make sure that we don't put you in a zone that's gonna still have one or two people that's gonna be needing a.
That's fine, like I said, I don't care what number is attached to the end of residential.
Okay. We thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Real quick, I apologize for speaking out, but I don't know if it makes a difference. The Dudley Solar Farm also is on Fish Road. Their property abuts Fish Road. So I don't know if.
Yeah, we can't rezone the solar farm to residential 43 because that's not a
But you can
permitted
put
use.
you can put the adult use area as an overlay over the
Right.
solar farm then.
Solar farm.
It has to be usable.
They could use it.
Has to be usable.
Well, these runs out in 30 years.
Get all those panels.
I didn't know if that made a difference.
Okay, I'll look at it, thank you.
That the solar farm property comes all the way down to Fish Road.
Okay, we'll avoid the solar problem, because we don't wanna make that residential, because then it'll be in violation.
Well, in roughly, 20 years, the town's gonna own all that property according to the agreement.
correct, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you can do what you want with it. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen. Sorry for the.
Put up a cell phone tower.
Night.
Another cell phone tower, that's
All
right.
right, Mr. Chairman, we
Mr.
get some
Chairman, if we
vouchers
could-
or something we gotta take care of.
Yeah,
here before
we need to do the vouchers, Bill?
Right, and if you want, you could authorize me to sign them, so you don't have to wait around and do this.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we need a motion to?
So I'm the one member that has a hard stop at 10 o'clock. Is it okay if I take off?
Sure.
Without getting in trouble?
Nope,
No.
I'm still present. It's not
We'll
like
note your name.
we got enough.
Showed up at all?
8 more meetings.
So we have two vouchers, one for SEP Solar, thank you, Dan, and one for review of the Fish Road definitive plan, both for Gray's Engineering. Somebody want to make a motion that will?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve payment to Graves Engineering for the SEP Solar Pre-Construction Conference, $344.25, and for review of the Fish Road definitive plan for $1,557.50, and that we authorize the town planner to make signature to those vouchers.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I now make a motion that we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Aye.
All in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
All right,
Thank you.
Mr. Lavoy, if you're still with us, good evening.
Thank you, everybody, good night.
I totally forgot.